Hey there. Before we begin, you should be in a position that is comfortable to you, and you can let us know in the comments where in the world you are and what is the current time for you. Your eyes snap open to the sound of distant artillery, a cacophony that's become your unholy alarm clock in the muddy symphony that is the Western Front, circa 1917. Ah, the sweet melody of the Great War. You might think you've awoken in a nightmare, but no, it's just another day as a medic in the trenches, where the only thing more constant than the mud is the chaos. First things first, the smell. It's a peculiar blend of damp earth, sweat, and something metallic that reminds you you're uncomfortably close to both gunpowder and the makeshift facilities everyone shares. If you're looking for that fresh morning dew, you're in the wrong century, my friend. The trenches are more like a masterclass in olfactory endurance. Speaking of which, don't forget to check your feet. Trenchfoot is the uninvited house guest that never leaves, unless you take those boots off regularly and give your toes some air. Forget what you've heard about the glamour of trench life. It's more about keeping your feet dry and your spirits, well, not drowned. Now, on to the logistics of your day. As a medic, you're not just a healer, you're a miracle worker armed with a rather alarming shortage of supplies. The numbers are staggering. You and your fellow medics are responsible for patching up soldiers with millions of bandages. Over 2 million were shipped to the Western Front alone. And let's not forget the tons, yes, literal tons of medical supplies that keep trickling in, never fast enough, and always seemingly 2 steps behind the carnage. Your workspace? Think less state-of-the-art hospital and more tent with aspirations. These makeshift hospitals, or casualty clearing stations as they're officially called, are your playground. They're strategically placed just far enough from the front lines to avoid direct hits, but close enough to ensure you never miss the action. Here, you encounter everything from shrapnel injuries to gas attacks. Each soldier a grim reminder of what's at stake and why your job is crucial. And let's talk about the other uninvited guests. Lice. Oh, the lice. You'd think these tiny creatures had a personal vendetta against the human race. Forget about romanticized notions of battlefield camaraderie. It's hard to feel brotherly love when you're scratching like a dog with fleas. The official advice is to singe them with a candle. Romantic candlelit evenings? More like desperate candlelit delousings. But hey, at least it's a distraction from the constant background noise of warfare. As you navigate this morning chaos, you can't help but wonder how you ended up here. The truth is, medicine in wartime is as much about improvisation as it is about knowledge. There's no time for hesitation when a soldier's life hangs in the balance. You've got to make snap decisions with whatever's at hand, be it a morphine syringe or a strong stomach. And while the textbooks back home might tell you how to treat a broken bone or a bullet wound, they don't cover the part where you're doing it all under the threat of shell fire or while knee-deep in mud. But here's the thing. Despite the grim reality, there's a sense of purpose that drives you and your comrades. You're part of a colossal machine, one that's desperately trying to hold together amidst the chaos. And each life you save is a small victory in a war that feels endless. You're not just witnessing history, you're patching it up with stitches, bandages, and a resilience you didn't know you had. So, you lace up your boots, check your supplies, and step into the fray once more. The day is young, and the work of a WWI medic is never done. But hey, who needs coffee when you've got the adrenaline of 1,000 artillery shells to wake you up? Welcome to the front line, where every day is an education in survival, and history is written in blood, sweat, and a whole lot of mud. As you step into the fray, there's no denying the grim reality that the battlefields of World War I are less about strategic brilliance and more about survival roulette. Before you can even think about lunch, and trust me, it's not the gourmet affair you're dreaming of, you're knee-deep in triage. Yes, that word that sounds like a fancy French delicacy, but is actually the art of deciding who gets a shot at living to see another grueling dawn. Triage in the trenches is a brutal calculus. It's where you, the weary medic, must decide whose life is worth the precious resources you barely have. Picture this. A soldier arrives with a leg wound that looks like it's been through a meat grinder. Do you save him, knowing it will take hours and precious bandages? Or do you focus on the bloke with a bullet graze who's more likely to walk away? This isn't just medicine. It's a high-stakes game of chess, and every move could cost you a pawn, or worse, a king. Now, let's talk numbers. At the height of the war, the British Army was treating around 1.6 million wounded soldiers. That's an ocean of injuries in a sea of mud. Each soldier's kit ran about £2 sterling, a small fortune in those days. But the real kicker? Medical care for a single soldier could cost up to £10. That's like buying a decent horse or a stack of top-shelf whiskey. And in this economic tug-of-war, every decision you make has a price tag attached. The hierarchy among medical staff is another layer of organised chaos. At the top, you've got the surgeons, often revered as the rock stars of the medical world, if rock stars wore blood-spattered aprons and worked in tents. Then come the nurses, the unsung heroes keeping everything running while navigating the minefield of military protocol. Finally, there's you, the medic. You're the jack of all trades, the fixer, the one who gets their hands dirty sometimes, literally, when you're elbow deep in someone's chest cavity. Bureaucracy, you see, loves to rear its head even on the battlefield. Every bandage, every dose of morphine, every stretcher has to be accounted for. There's paperwork, the sweet irony of filing forms while shells rain down overhead. It's like a grim parody of office life, complete with the same office politics, just with higher stakes. And while you're juggling this administrative nightmare, you can't help but wonder if the real enemy isn't the guy across the trench, but the endless forms in triplicate. War, as the saying goes, is hell, but it's an expensive hell. And while romantic notions of heroic charges and gallant rescues fill the pages of history books, the reality is more like a ledger of human cost. The staggering price of war isn't just in the lives lost, but in the sheer economic drain. In 1917 alone, the cost of the war for Britain was about £5 million a day. That's a financial black hole, swallowing resources faster than you can say overdraft. As you navigate this maelstrom of mud and blood, you can't help but reflect on the myths that surround warfare. The tales of valour and sacrifice are intoxicating, like a siren's song, but they often gloss over the gritty details, like the fact that the real heroes are often too busy dodging lice and patching up their comrades to pose for a statue. You're part of a story that's far less glamorous than the one told in recruitment posters, but infinitely more human. So here you are, a medic in the midst of madness, balancing the scales of life and death with the tools of your trade. Each decision is a calculated risk, each bandage a lifeline thrown into the abyss. And as the day wears on, you find a strange sort of rhythm in the chaos, a dance with destiny that you never signed up for but can't walk away from. Because in the end, though the war may be endless, every life you save is a small, defiant victory against the tide of history. And that, my friend, is worth every ounce of mud and sweat you're standing in. And just like that, the chaos takes a breather. You find yourself in a rare fleeting lull, an afternoon intermission in the relentless theatre of war. It's not quite peace, more like war's coffee break, minus the actual coffee. Amid this brief respite, your mind wanders, and you get a chance to reflect on the political puppetry that landed you here in this muddy, makeshift operating room. Picture it, a tangled web of alliances and treaties spun with the best of diplomatic intentions, but unravelling like an old sweater caught on barbed wire. The stage was set for a global showdown long before the first shot was fired. By 1914, Europe was a powder keg, a continental game of dominoes just waiting for a push. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand took a bullet in Sarajevo, it was more than the death of an heir, it was the spark that lit the fuse. Austria-Hungary pointed fingers at Serbia, and thanks to a network of alliances, the whole thing snowballed faster than a snowman on a sled. Let's break it down with some hard numbers. We're talking about the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, squaring off against the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. A tangled mess, right? And here you are, a medic in the midst of this geopolitical chess match, trying to make sense of how decisions made in opulent conference rooms trickle down to your muddy trench-side triage. Now, about that noble war myth. It's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as war itself. The idea of a glorious battle, all chivalry and honour, is intoxicating. But let's face it, the reality is more grim menagerie than knightly quest. The trenches are nothing short of hellish. Mud, lice, rats the size of small cats. These are your daily companions. The only thing more oppressive than the mud is the stench of decay, a constant reminder that this isn't an epic saga, but a brutal struggle for survival. And speaking of myths, let's not forget the role of propaganda. Oh, the sweet, sweet spin of wartime messaging. Governments on all sides painted glorified pictures of heroism, urging young men to enlist with promises of adventure and glory. The posters. They were works of art, really. Depicted soldiers as knights in shining armour, conveniently omitting the part where they might end up knee-deep in muck, battling not just the enemy, but trenchfoot and dysentery. It's like selling a vacation package to a tropical paradise, only to find out the beach is actually a swamp. Propaganda also had a knack for vilifying the enemy, turning nations into faceless hordes of evil. It's easier to fight a war when the other side is painted as malevolent monsters rather than men with families and fears of their own. This war of perceptions shaped attitudes, fueled the machine, and kept the money flowing. Because let's not forget, war is an expensive business. Britain alone was burning through about £5 million a day by 1917. That's a hefty tab, even for a country with an empire on which the sun never sets. But here's a kicker for you. The war to end all wars was anything but. When the dust finally settled and the Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, it was more of a prelude than a conclusion. Instead of laying the groundwork for lasting peace, it sowed the seeds for future conflict. The reparations and territorial demands placed on Germany were like pouring salt on an open wound, laying the foundation for the rise of yet another, even more devastating global conflict 2 decades later. So here you are, a cog in the wheel of this colossal conflict, reflecting on how the ripples of political decisions reach your makeshift operating table. The lives you patch up today are part of a larger narrative, one where the stakes are high and the outcomes uncertain. Each soldier you save is a living testament to the chaotic intersection of human ambition, fear, and survival. It's a story as old as humanity, written in the mud and blood of battlefields around the world, and as the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the trench, you ready yourself for whatever comes next, because this lull, like peace, is only temporary. The war machine will roar back to life soon enough, and you'll be back in the thick of it, balancing life and death amidst the echo of artillery and the ever-present spectre of history in the making. As you brace yourself for the inevitable return of chaos, the sun begins its slow descent, casting a golden glow over the battlefield that almost makes it look peaceful. But don't be fooled, it's just the calm before the storm, a brief intermission in the never-ending opera of war. And with the evening comes the less visible, but equally devastating, fallout of the conflict, the psychological toll on you and your comrades. Enter shell shock, the ominous term that emerged from this very war. It's the early 20th century label for what we now recognize as PTSD, a condition that ranks right up there with trenchfoot and lice as an unwelcome companion in the trenches. In 1915, Dr. Charles S. Myers first described the condition in medical journals, noting that soldiers exhibited symptoms ranging from tremors to paralysis, all without any visible injuries. Talk about the ghosts of war. These are demons that don't play fair. The numbers are staggering. By the end of the war, the British Army alone had recorded over 80,000 cases of shell shock. That's like filling Wembley Stadium, with a few thousand left milling about outside, all carrying the invisible scars of battle. And while the physical wounds could often be bandaged or stitched, the psychological ones were much harder to treat. In this era of burgeoning psychology, early attempts at treatment were, shall we say, less than ideal. The methods ranged from the mildly ineffective to the downright medieval. Picture this. Soldiers subjected to electroshock therapy, a practice that seemed more like an experiment in cruel and unusual punishment than a medical treatment. Others were encouraged to relive their experiences through hypnosis or talking cures, a precursor to modern therapy that was about as comforting as a wet sock. But don't let the grim realities overshadow the camaraderie that blooms in these dire circumstances. It's an odd paradox, really. Amidst the chaos, you find moments of unexpected humanity. When the shells stop falling, there's a strange sort of peace, and in those quiet moments, you and your fellow soldiers find solace in shared stories, dark humour, and the occasional smuggled bottle of something strong enough to make you forget, if only for a little while. And it's not just the soldiers on the front lines who feel the mental strain. You, the medic, are no stranger to the psychological toll. Each day is a balancing act, maintaining a semblance of sanity while surrounded by so much suffering. You develop gallows, humor as a survival mechanism, trading jokes that would make a civilian's hair curl but keep you and your comrades from falling into despair. It's in these small acts of defiance against the madness that you find the spirit of camaraderie. Like the time you and your mates fashioned a makeshift football out of rags and mud, kicking it around in a brief moment of levity. Or the nights huddled around a dim lantern, sharing stories that have nothing to do with the war, pretending for a moment that you're anywhere but here. Back in Britain, the government was slowly waking up to the mental toll of the war. By 1918, specialised hospitals were established, like the Craig Lockhart War Hospital in Edinburgh, where pioneering psychiatrists like Dr. W.H.R. Rivers treated officers for shell shock. It's here that the famous war poet Wilfred Owen met fellow poet Siegfried Sassoon, both grappling with their own demons. Their poetry, raw and unflinching, painted a vivid picture of the inner battles faced by soldiers long after the guns had fallen silent. Despite the burgeoning awareness, shell shock remained shrouded in stigma. Soldiers were often seen as weak or cowardly for succumbing to it. This wasn't just a war against a physical enemy, but a battle against the very perception of mental illness itself. And while some progress was made, it would take decades, and another world war, before PTSD was fully acknowledged and understood. As the evening wears on, you realize that the war isn't just fought on the battlefield, it's waged within the mind. Each soldier, each medic, is a combatant in a psychological struggle that doesn't end with the signing of treaties. The camaraderie you share with your comrades is a lifeline, a reminder that you're not alone in this fight. The small acts of kindness, the shared laughter, and the mutual understanding create a bond that transcends the horrors surrounding you. So as the stars begin to glitter in the night sky, you steel yourself for another round of triage, another night of uncertainty. Because while the war outside may rage on, it's the battle within that you're determined to win. And as you stand among your fellow medics and soldiers, you know that whatever tomorrow brings, you'll face it together. In a world torn apart by conflict, it's the moments of humanity that hold it together, however tenuously. In this landscape of mud and blood, your duty as a medic is more than just tending to physical wounds. You're a part-time philosopher, a reluctant psychologist, and sometimes, when the situation demands, a silent confidant. You may not have all the answers, but your presence alone offers a small measure of comfort. And that, in this chaotic world, is no small thing. As the night deepens, you take a moment to look around at your comrades, each one carrying their own burdens, each one a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. You realize that while war has a way of stripping away the layers, reducing life to its raw essentials, it also reveals the core of what it means to be human. In the face of adversity, you find the strength to keep going, one step at a time, one day at a time, and maybe, just maybe, that's what will see you through to the other side. As you stand among the soldiers and medics, reflecting on the resilience it takes to get through each day, there's a fresh realization. This war, with all its horror and heartbreak, is a crucible for change. It's like someone took the world, tossed it into a giant pressure cooker, and hit the high setting. And out of this boiling chaos, new ideas, technologies, and practices are emerging, reshaping the very landscape of medicine and society. Let's start with surgery, a field that, during the war, went from horse and buggy to something resembling modern medicine. The battlefield was a savage classroom, teaching medics and surgeons more than any textbook could. Take the advent of antiseptics and sterilization, for instance. In the pre-war days, surgeons might as well have been performing operations in a barn for all the germs they let cavort around. But the war made it clear infection was the real enemy. With the sheer number of casualties, the stakes were too high to be sloppy. Enter Carroll-Dakin solution, a mixture of sodium hypochlorite and boric acid used to irrigate wounds and kill bacteria. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it did reduce the death toll from infections significantly. Then there were the surgical techniques themselves. Before the war, amputations were often the go-to method for severe injuries, but war forced a rethink. Surgeons began to refine limb salvage techniques, learning to repair rather than remove. By 1918, techniques like debridement, cleaning out dead tissue and shrapnel, were saving limbs that would have been lost in earlier conflicts. It was a bloody kind of progress, but progress nonetheless. And let's talk about blood transfusions. Before the war, they were about as rare as a unicorn. But necessity is the mother of invention, and by 1917 doctors like Captain Oswald Robertson were pioneering the use of stored blood. He set up the first blood bank during the Battle of Cambrai, using sodium citrate to prevent coagulation. This innovation was a lifesaver, literally laying the groundwork for modern transfusion medicine. It wasn't just surgical techniques that saw advancement. The war was a petri dish for new medical technologies like the portable X-ray machine, championed by none other than Marie Curie. She developed petites curies, mobile radiography units that brought X-ray technology directly to the front lines, allowing for quicker and more accurate diagnoses. The impact was huge. Soldiers with fractured limbs could be treated more effectively, increasing survival rates and speeding up recovery. But don't let the sheen of progress blind you to the grim realities. The war was a ruthless teacher, and the lessons it imparted were written in blood. For every medical breakthrough, there were countless lives lost, a reminder that innovation often comes with a heavy price tag. The myth of the war as a noble endeavor is seductive, but the truth is harsher. Yes, it accelerated medical advancements, but at the cost of millions who became the unwitting guinea pigs in this grand experiment. While the war was a catalyst for medical progress, it also left indelible marks on society. The psychological toll, the shattered bodies and minds, reshaped how nations viewed their veterans. The term shell shock may have been replaced by PTSD, but the stigma and challenges faced by returning soldiers continued to echo through the decades. The Great War forced societies to confront these invisible wounds, albeit haltingly and with much resistance. Economically, the war was a black hole. By its end, Britain's national debt had ballooned to over $7 billion, an astronomical figure at the time. The cost of maintaining soldiers, supplying them, and treating their injuries drained treasuries faster than you could say deficit. This financial burden reshaped economies, leading to the kind of austerity measures that make modern-day budget cuts look like a minor inconvenience. Yet, in this sea of change, some myths remain stubbornly afloat. The image of the war as a grand adventure still lingers in the cultural consciousness, despite the stark realities. It's a narrative that appeals to something deep within us, a romanticized vision of courage and sacrifice. But as any veteran of the Great War could tell you, the reality was far less glamorous. The courage was real, yes, but it was the kind born of necessity, not choice. The sacrifices were not just heroic gestures, but often the result of brutal, impersonal forces grinding individuals into dust. As the day finally winds down and you find a moment of quiet, you reflect on the enduring legacy of those who served. They were ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Their resilience, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure and adapt. Their experiences, their stories, continue to shape our understanding of war and medicine. Today, we stand on the shoulders of those who braved the trenches, their legacy a constant reminder of the costs and the lessons of conflict. Modern medicine owes a debt to the unsung heroes of World War I, those medics, nurses and doctors who, in the face of overwhelming odds, pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Their efforts laid the foundation for the medical advancements we now take for granted. So, as you prepare to rest, let this be the takeaway. While the Great War was a period of unimaginable hardship, it was also a time of significant progress. The advancements in medicine and surgery, the understanding of psychological trauma, and the societal shifts it triggered are part of a complex legacy. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is a flicker of light, a chance for growth and improvement. In the end, the war was not the war to end all wars, but it was a crucible of change shaping the century that followed. It taught us that progress often comes at a great cost, and that the human capacity for resilience is as limitless as our capacity for conflict. As you close your eyes, remember those who served and sacrificed, their legacy a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. Flawed, complex, yet ever striving towards a better tomorrow. In the bustling heart of 19th century Paris, where gaslights flickered and horse-drawn carriages clattered over cobblestones, a young girl named Sarah Bernhardt was about to change the face of theatre. But before she became the divine Sarah known to history, she was just a teenager with a flair for the dramatic and a penchant for trouble. Born on October 22, 1844, in an era when Paris was both the cultural capital of the world and a city of stark social contrasts, Sarah's life was as unconventional as they come. Raised by her mother Judith, who was a courtesan with a client list longer than a Parisian café menu, Sarah's upbringing was anything but ordinary. Her father? Well, he was a mysterious figure, rumoured to be a wealthy law student, but his identity remains as elusive as a French mist. With a childhood spent bouncing between Catholic convent schools and the bohemian fringes of Parisian society, Sarah was no stranger to the chaotic dance of respectability and scandal. By the time she was 18, Sarah had decided that convent life was about as appealing as a soggy baguette. So what did she do? Naturally, she joined the prestigious Comédie Française, the national theatre of France. This wasn't just any gig. The Comédie Française was the cradle of French drama, where aspiring actors cut their teeth and sometimes lost their heads. Sarah's entry into this world was as dramatic as one might expect. Legend has it that she fainted during her audition, only to be revived by a splash of cold water and a round of applause. Now that's what I call making an entrance. But don't be fooled into thinking Sarah's path to stardom was paved with roses. Her early career was more like a bumpy ride on a rickety stagecoach. She quickly gained a reputation for being difficult, possibly because she had a penchant for storming out of rehearsals and slapping fellow actors. Her first significant scandal came in 1862 when she slapped a senior actress over a disagreement about stage directions. It was less about artistic vision and more about who got the last eclair at the café. Her behaviour earned her a suspension, and she found herself at odds with the theatre's management, who probably viewed her as a tempest in a teapot. Despite these theatrics, Sarah was nothing if not resilient. She used her flair for drama and her knack for publicity to keep her name in the spotlight. Parisian newspapers were all too eager to lap up stories of her exploits, painting her as both a diva and a darling. It was the kind of attention that could make or break a budding career. But for Sarah, it was all part of the show. And let's not forget the cold, hard cash, or lack thereof. Being a young actress in Paris wasn't the glamorous lifestyle one might imagine. In the 1860s, a starting salary at the Comédie Française was about 1,500 francs a year, just enough to keep a roof over your head and a baguette in your hand. Indeed, Sarah often found herself juggling roles at smaller theatres to make ends meet, which meant she was no stranger to the economic realities of the time. Her knack for self-promotion was matched only by her ability to court controversy. She once posed for a photograph lying in a coffin, a stunt that was both macabre and mesmerizing. It was a move that raised eyebrows and kept tongues wagging, but it also played into the romantic, tragic persona she was carefully crafting. Death, drama, and a diva in a coffin? Talk about a one-woman show. Sarah's early years in the theatre were a testament to her tenacity and her ability to thrive in a world that was as cutthroat as it was captivating. She learned to navigate the treacherous waters of fame and infamy, honing her craft and her brand with every scandal and performance. Her story is a reminder that even the greatest legends have humble and often tumultuous beginnings. As Sarah herself once said, life begets life. Energy creates energy. It is by spending oneself that one becomes rich, a philosophy she lived by as she barreled her way to stardom, leaving a trail of drama and delight in her wake. And speaking of barreling to stardom, let's talk about Sarah's next audacious move. After her rocky start at the Comédie Française, you'd think she'd cling to the safety net of France's theatrical temple like a cat to a warm radiator. But no, Sarah had other plans. Plans that involved a leap of faith so bold it makes Evel Knievel look like a cautious pedestrian. In 1866, she took a gamble that could have sent her career careening over a cliff. She left the Comédie Française. That's right, she walked away from the cradle of French drama, where the applause was as reliable as the Parisian rain. Why, you ask? Because Sarah had the audacity to believe she could do better. Not just financially, but artistically. She was tired of playing second fiddle and wanted the whole orchestra. So she jumped ship and joined the Odeon Theatre, a move that had theatre critics clutching their pearls and muttering about the hubris of youth. But Sarah wasn't just any ingenue with stars in her eyes. She was a force of nature with a plan. At the Odeon, she began to carve out a reputation as an actress who could command the stage with a mere flick of her wrist or a single, heart-stopping gaze. Her transformation into a theatrical powerhouse didn't happen overnight. It was more of a slow burn, like a candle melting into a dramatic puddle of potential. But soon enough, in 1869, came the role that catapulted her to fame, Marguerite Gautier in La Dame aux Camélias. This was no ordinary gig. It was a role that required a cocktail of vulnerability, strength, and an ability to sob beautifully on cue. Sarah nailed it. Her portrayal was so electrifying that audiences were left wondering if they were watching a play or a personal revelation. The critics? They couldn't get enough. They raved about her haunting intensity and ethereal charm, phrases that might sound like the blurbs on a perfume bottle but were, in fact, sincere accolades from the toughest theatre critics in Paris. And let's not understate the economic boost this role provided. The play's success saw theatregoers flocking like seagulls to a fresh baguette, and Sarah's salary saw a welcome increase. It was a financial windfall in a city where actresses were often paid in applause and compliments instead of francs. Her fame skyrocketed, and she wasn't about to let it plummet. Enter Sarah, the media maestro. Long before Instagram influencers and TikTok stars, she was crafting her image with the precision of a master painter. She understood the power of the press and wielded it like a pro. Her antics off stage were as carefully choreographed as her performances. Remember the coffin photo? That was just the tip of the iceberg. She courted controversy like a suitor at a ball, ensuring her name was never far from the lips of the public. Sarah's flair for the dramatic extended beyond the footlights. In 1870, during the Siege of Paris, she turned the Odeon Theatre into a hospital for wounded soldiers. It was a move that showcased her compassion and business acumen. After all, nothing enhances a persona like a touch of philanthropy. By the end of the siege, she was a national heroine, proving that even in the midst of cannon fire and chaos, she could steal the spotlight. And then there was the issue of her voice. Critics claimed her voice was thin, like a crepe spread too far, yet she transformed this supposed weakness into a signature strength. She used her voice to convey emotion with surgical precision, proving that volume isn't everything. Her critics, who expected the vocal equivalent of a brass band, were instead silenced by the delicate strains of her performance. Sarah's rise to fame wasn't just a testament to her talent, it was a masterclass in self-promotion and strategic risk-taking. She knew how to turn potential pitfalls into stepping stones, a skill that was as necessary in 19th century France as it is today. As she once famously said, "Theatre is the only reality, and it is not real." Indeed, Sarah Bernhardt played the role of a lifetime, herself, the inimitable divine Sarah, who managed to blend the boundaries between life and art with every step on and off the stage. But don't pack up your playbill just yet. There's more drama to come, and Sarah's story is far from over. Her flair for reinvention and her hunger for new challenges would see her taking yet more risks, proving that in the world of theatre, as in life, there's no place for complacency. Stay tuned for more of Sarah's theatrical escapades, where the curtain never truly falls, and the next act is always waiting in the wings. And speaking of more drama, Sarah Bernhardt was about to take her act on the road. Well, on the sea, as it were. You see, by the 1870s, Sarah wasn't content with merely captivating Paris. She had her sights set on conquering the world stage. This was no small feat in the 19th century, when international travel wasn't a matter of booking a direct flight, but more of a logistical odyssey involving steamships, carriages, and enough luggage to make Louis Vuitton blush. But then again, if anyone could turn a Herculean task into a theatrical production, it was Sarah. Now, let's talk numbers, because that's where the real drama unfolds. The cost of a transatlantic journey in the late 1800s was the kind of expense that could make even a diva clutch her pearls. A first-class ticket on a steamship could set you back around 3,000 francs, and that was just for the privilege of feeling mildly seasick in style. Sarah's troupe didn't travel light. Oh no. Her entourage included fellow actors, assistants, and enough costumes to stage a small opera. We're talking trunks upon trunks of elaborate attire, each piece a testament to her flair for the extravagant. The logistics of hauling this mobile fashion show across continents was less a travel itinerary and more a military operation. But Sarah was nothing if not resourceful. She had a knack for turning potential pitfalls into PR goldmines. Take her 1880 American tour, for example. Not content with just playing to packed houses, she orchestrated a press frenzy that would make today's tabloids look like amateur hour. When she arrived in New York, she was greeted by throngs of reporters eager for a glimpse of the woman who had captured Europe's heart. She knew exactly how to play the room, charming the skeptics and wooing the crowds with her unparalleled charisma. And here's the kicker. Despite the lavish lifestyle and the grand tours, Sarah had an uncanny ability to keep her finances afloat. Sure, her spending habits were as extravagant as her performances, but beneath that veil of opulence lay a shrewd businesswoman. Her American tour was a financial triumph, grossing over $200,000, a staggering sum in the 1880s, equivalent to millions today. She knew how to balance the books, making sure the ledger was as impressive as her stage presence. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Sarah's international tours were peppered with hiccups that would make a lesser star retreat to their dressing room. On one occasion, a steamer carrying her troupe was delayed due to a storm. Instead of letting the setback dampen her spirits, Sarah took the opportunity to entertain the crew and passengers, turning a potential disaster into an impromptu performance. The legend of Sarah grew with each such anecdote, her reputation burnished by tales of her indomitable spirit and her ability to turn adversity into advantage. And what's a world tour without a few royal encounters? Sarah's ability to captivate wasn't limited to the common folk. She had a knack for rubbing elbows with the elite, from the European aristocracy to American industrialists. During her travels, she performed for Queen Victoria in London and charmed the likes of Tsar Alexander III in Russia. Her meetings with royalty weren't just about flaunting her star power. They were strategic moves in her campaign to solidify her status as the reigning queen of drama. But let's not get too carried away with the glitz and glamour. Beneath the sparkling veneer of Sarah's international stardom lay the gritty realities of 19th-century travel. The conditions were often less than luxurious, with cramped quarters and unpredictable schedules. Yet Sarah's resilience shone through. She had an extraordinary ability to adapt, to find the silver lining in every cloud. Her tours weren't just about performing, they were about building bridges, connecting cultures, and expanding her theatrical empire one city at a time. Sarah's ability to captivate audiences worldwide lay not just in her talent, but in her understanding of the human condition. She knew that, whether in Paris or Philadelphia, audiences were drawn to the universal themes of love, tragedy, and triumph. She was a master at tapping into these emotions, her performances transcending language barriers and cultural divides. It was this universal appeal that made her a sensation wherever she went. In an era when women were often relegated to supporting roles both on and off the stage, Sarah Bernhardt was rewriting the script. She wasn't just an actress, she was a pioneer, a trailblazer who understood the power of her platform. Her international tours were more than just a series of performances. They were a testament to her vision and her determination to leave an indelible mark on the world of theatre. And let's not forget the press stunts. Sarah was the queen of the grand gesture, the kind that would make today's PR gurus envious. She once reportedly leaped from a ship into a rowing boat to reach the shore faster, ensuring she was the first to greet the waiting crowds. It was moves like these that cemented her status as a living legend, her antics as much a part of her brand as her performances. As Sarah's fame grew, so did her ability to influence and inspire. She wasn't just a performer, she was a cultural icon, a phenomenon who understood the power of her presence. Her tours were a lesson in the art of self-promotion, a masterclass in how to turn talent into a global enterprise. She was more than just the divine Sarah. She was a force of nature, a woman who had the audacity to believe that the world was her stage. So, as the curtain rises on the next act of Sarah's incredible journey, remember this: she was a woman who refused to be confined by the limitations of her time. Her international tours weren't just about performing, they were about redefining what was possible, about challenging the status quo and proving that a woman could not only play the lead role, but command the entire production. And with that, we leave Sarah poised for her next adventure, ready to dazzle and delight audiences in the farthest corners of the globe. Stay tuned, there's more drama to come, and you won't want to miss a moment. And just when you thought Sarah's story couldn't get any more cinematic, she decided to take her talents to the silver screen, back when the concept of talkies was as futuristic as flying cars. By the early 1900s, Sarah Bernhardt was already a household name, not just in France, but in every corner of the globe that had a theatre and an audience ready to be swept off their feet. Yet, like any true diva, she wasn't content to rest on her laurels. Oh no, she wanted to conquer the latest frontier in entertainment, silent films. Let's set the stage here. The film industry was in its infancy, with Nickelodeons popping up like mushrooms after the rain. The idea of a theatre legend like Sarah transitioning to film was, to some, akin to Shakespeare writing jingles for commercials. But Sarah saw it differently. She understood the power of motion pictures to reach even wider audiences and, perhaps, cement her legend for eternity. And let's be real, in an era before Netflix, what better way to binge-watch than a silent film marathon? Sarah's first foray onto the silver screen came with the 1900 film Le Duel de Hamlet, where she reprised her stage role as Hamlet. Yes, you heard that right, Hamlet. Sarah was never one to shy away from breaking gender norms, and her portrayal of the brooding Danish prince was nothing short of revolutionary. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a statement. She was telling the world that roles weren't defined by gender, but by the actor's ability to inhabit them. The film itself was a modest affair, running a mere 2 minutes long, but don't let its brevity fool you. It was a seismic moment in the history of cinema, capturing the ethereal presence of one of the theatre's greatest talents in a medium that was still finding its feet. And get this, the film was shot using the phonocinema Fireplace system, which attempted to synchronize film with sound. Talk about being ahead of your time. But Sarah's cinematic adventures didn't stop there. In 1911, she starred in La Dame aux Camélias, bringing one of her most famous stage roles to the screen. The film, a melodrama in every sense of the word, was a hit. It was a visual feast, full of dramatic gestures and intense close-ups that could give today's Oscar contenders a run for their money. Sarah's performance was as magnetic as ever, proving that even without her voice, she could captivate an audience with a single glance. Now, let's talk numbers. The silent film industry was becoming a lucrative business, and Sarah was savvy enough to cash in. Her involvement in films like Queen Elizabeth in 1912 reportedly earned her $30,000, a princely sum at the time, roughly equivalent to $800,000 today. It was clear that Sarah understood the economic potential of this new medium and wasn't about to let it slip through her perfectly manicured fingers. Yet, Sarah's life was not without its trials. In 1915, she faced one of her greatest personal hardships, the amputation of her right leg due to a knee injury sustained years earlier. For most people, such a life-altering event would be a cue to exit stage left, but not for Sarah. Instead, she adapted her performances, often acting while seated or supported by props. Her resilience was a testament to her indomitable spirit, and audiences continued to flock to see her, inspired by her determination to perform despite her physical limitations. But wait, there's more. Sarah's influence on future generations of performers is where her legacy truly shines. She was a pioneer in the art of self-promotion, a maestro at crafting her public persona long before the term brand became a staple of marketing jargon. Her theatrical style, characterized by grand gestures and intense emotional expression, set the standard for dramatic acting in both theatre and film. Future stars like Marilyn Monroe and Marlene Dietrich would draw inspiration from her ability to blend vulnerability with strength, creating characters that resonated with audiences long after the curtain fell. And let's not forget the cultural impact. Sarah's roles often challenged societal norms, from playing male characters to portraying strong, independent women. She was a trailblazer for gender equality in the arts, proving that talent transcends the boundaries of gender. Her ability to seamlessly transition from stage to screen demonstrated the potential for actors to cross mediums, paving the way for future generations to explore new artistic avenues. By the time she passed away in 1923, at the age of 78, Sarah Bernhardt had left an indelible mark on the entertainment industry. Her embrace of silent films was not just an artistic venture, but a testament to her adaptability and foresight. She understood that the world was changing and that to remain relevant, one had to evolve with it. Her story is a reminder that true legends are not defined by the medium they choose, but by their ability to transcend it. As we wrap up this chapter of Sarah's life, it's clear that her journey was about more than just fame and fortune. It was about breaking barriers, challenging conventions, and daring to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. Stay tuned for the final act, where we'll explore how Sarah's legacy continues to influence the arts today, proving that even though the curtain may have fallen on her life, her spirit is still very much centre stage. Sarah Bernhardt's life was a kaleidoscope of drama, scandal, and triumph. A saga so rich it leaves even the most imaginative Hollywood scriptwriters green with envy. As we delve into the final act of her story, it's time to separate the myth from the reality and peer into the legacy she left behind, a legacy that remains as compelling as a Parisian noir. First, let's tackle the myths, those deliciously alluring tales that have orbited around Sarah like moths to a flame. One of the juiciest myths is that Sarah was the quintessential diva, demanding and tempestuous, with a penchant for melodrama both on and off the stage. While it's true she had a flair for the theatrical, who wouldn't with a career built on it? She was also a consummate professional who understood the power of reputation in a cutthroat industry. Her so-called diva antics were as much about crafting an unforgettable image as they were about personal temperament. Her insistence on being photographed in a coffin, for instance, was not just a macabre whim but a savvy move to keep her name on the tip of everyone's tongue. Talk about a publicity stunt that would make today's influencers take notes. But let's sprinkle in some reality. Sarah wasn't just a media darling, she was a trailblazer in an industry that was, and often still is, reluctant to hand women the reins. In an era when actresses were often viewed as little more than decorative accessories, Sarah commanded respect and arguably set the stage for the likes of Meryl Streep and Viola Davis. Her career choices laid the groundwork for women to play complex, leading roles that went beyond the archetype of the damsel in distress. She was one of the first to own her theatrical company, a move that gave her control over her work and her image, a rarity in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And let's not forget the economic context of Sarah's time, which was as turbulent as a Shakespearean tempest. The late 1800s and early 1900s were periods of immense social and industrial upheaval, with the world barreling toward modernity like a steam train with no brakes. Sarah navigated these choppy waters with the skill of a seasoned captain, using her earnings not just to live lavishly but to invest in her future. A shrewd move when the financial stability of performers was anything but guaranteed. Her global tours weren't just artistic endeavors, but also lucrative business ventures, each meticulously orchestrated to maximize profit and prestige. This was a woman who knew how to balance the books while keeping the spotlight firmly on her. Her influence on popular culture is undeniable, and it stretches far beyond the footlights of the theatre. She was a pioneer in the art of self-promotion, prefiguring the celebrity culture that would later consume the entertainment industry. Her image appeared on everything from postcards to chocolates, a testament to her understanding of branding long before the term was coined. Even Andy Warhol, the king of pop art, drew inspiration from her iconic visage, further cementing her status as a cultural icon. Yet, Sarah's legacy is not confined to the arts. She was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. Her life was a series of calculated risks and bold decisions, each one a step toward redefining what was possible for women in her era. Her story is a reminder that greatness often requires a willingness to challenge the status quo, to push boundaries even when, or especially when, the odds seem insurmountable. And let's talk influence, the kind that ripples through time like a stone cast into a pond. Sarah's approach to acting, with its emotional intensity and theatrical flair, laid the foundation for the method acting movement that would later revolutionize the craft. Her ability to convey complex emotions with mere gestures and expressions was a precursor to the nuanced performances we see today, where less is often more, and silence speaks volumes. In the realm of theatre, Sarah was a force of nature, a hurricane of talent and tenacity that swept through the artistic landscape, leaving an indelible mark. She set a precedent for future generations of performers, showing that with talent, ambition, and a dash of audacity, one could transcend the limitations of their time. Her life was a masterclass in reinvention, a blueprint for how to remain relevant in an ever-changing world. But perhaps the most enduring aspect of Sarah's legacy is her role as a trailblazer for women in the arts. She was proof that a woman could be more than just a muse. She could be the master of her destiny, the architect of her own legend. Her story continues to inspire, reminding us that the stage is not just a place for performance, but a platform for change. As the curtain falls on the tale of Sarah Bernhardt, it's clear that her life was more than just a series of performances. It was an epic narrative of resilience, innovation, and transformation. Her legacy lives on in every actress who dares to dream bigger, in every performer who refuses to be pigeonholed by societal expectations. In the grand theatre of history, Sarah Bernhardt remains a star, her light undimmed by the passage of time. And as we leave the theatre, heads filled with stories of her indomitable spirit, we can't help but feel that we've witnessed something truly extraordinary, a life that was, in every sense of the word, a masterpiece. The first rays of sun slice through the dense canopy, casting a dappled pattern on the earthen floor. You're not just waking up, you're stepping onto a stage set with the lush chaos that is the Amazon rainforest. This isn't your average morning ritual, and you're not the average village dweller. You're an Amazonian shaman in 16th century Brazil, a title that comes with as much responsibility as it does mystique. As the jungle around you stirs to life, the day ahead isn't just another tick on the calendar. It's a delicate dance with nature that guides your every move. First things first, rise and shine with the help of some trusty local flora. Forget about a modern-day cup of joe. You've got something far more intriguing. Your morning kickstart involves a handful of crushed guarana seeds. These little wonders are packed with twice the caffeine punch of coffee beans, which means your ancestors were effectively the original energy drinkers. Guarana's not just a buzzword for hipster beverages, it's your ticket to sharp focus and heightened senses, essential for navigating the spiritual and physical demands of the day. With your mind as alert as a jaguar on the hunt, it's time to embrace the sounds of the forest. The cacophony of bird calls isn't just background noise, it's your cue to start the day's first ritual. This isn't about waving a stick or mumbling some words. Oh no, this is a full-on symphony. Your chants, honed and passed down through generations, are a blend of rhythm and incantation meant to harmonize with the natural world. Each note is carefully crafted to resonate with the energies around you, creating a bridge between the seen and the unseen. Now, onto the herbs. You might be tempted to think it's all about the exotic and mystical, but here's the reality check. It's more about practicality and survival than it is about mystery. Take ayahuasca, the infamous brew that's become the poster child of shamanic rituals. Contrary to the modern-day notion of it being a psychedelic escape, for you, it's a tool for clarity and vision. You're not downing this stuff for a hallucinogenic joyride. It's a meticulously prepared concoction used for specific ceremonial purposes, often requiring days to prepare and a keen understanding of its powerful effects. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ayahuasca and its dizzying visions are for later. Right now, you're focusing on the everyday allies, plants like tobacco, which is revered not just for its calming effects, but for its status as a sacred offering. You methodically prepare a blend, not for smoking, but for smudging, a ritual meant to purify the space and your spirit. This isn't your typical weekend smudge stick from a New Age shop. It's an intricate blend of leaves and barks, each chosen for its unique properties. The forest is not just your home, it's your pharmacy, your library, your altar. You know the bark of the cinchona tree is a natural remedy for fever, and that the sap of the rubber tree can seal a wound. Such knowledge isn't casual trivia, it's the lifeline of your community, a testament to centuries of observation and adaptation. Your role is to safeguard and pass on this wisdom, ensuring the survival of your people in a world that is as unforgiving as it is bountiful. As the sun climbs higher, you prepare for the interactions that define your day. Villagers will come seeking your guidance, not just for ailments, but for advice on everything from crop planting to resolving disputes. You are the mediator, the healer, the wisdom keeper. It's a role that requires not just knowledge, but an acute awareness of the social and political dynamics of your community. You are, in every sense, the pulse of the village, and your morning rituals are the heartbeat that keeps it all in sync. The air is thick with humidity and the promise of rain, but your senses are finely attuned to the subtleties of the environment. You can smell the earthy scent of petrichor before the first drop falls, feel the slight change in temperature that signals a storm. This awareness is vital, for the jungle is both a provider and a predator. It's a place where the line between life and death can be as thin as a vine. As the morning unfolds, you find yourself contemplating the vastness of your world. The Amazon is not just a backdrop for your existence. It's a complex ecosystem that you are intricately connected to. Every plant, every creature has a purpose and a story, and you hold the key to understanding them. This knowledge is your power, your responsibility, and your legacy. By the time the sun is fully up, you're ready to face the day, armed with the tools and the wisdom of your ancestors. The jungle is alive with possibilities, and you are its steward, its interpreter, and its voice. The morning rituals are complete, but the day is just beginning, and who knows what mysteries it will unfold. With the sun now fully in charge of the sky, it's time to play the day's most intricate game, gathering medicinal plants. You're not just strolling through the forest, basket in hand, like a leisurely herbal enthusiast. Nope. This is a high-stakes operation, akin to being a Wall Street trader, but with a much better view and, yes, the occasional snake thrown in for good measure. First up, let's talk economics. Bet you didn't think you'd need an economics degree to pick plants, did you? But here's the reality. In the 16th century Amazon, your knowledge of medicinal plants is your currency. Forget about gold coins or paper bills. That root over there? It's worth a fortune in bartered goods. Why? Because it cures ailments that would otherwise incapacitate a fellow tribesperson, and any good economist will tell you that healthy workers make for a productive society. Plus, in a place where every day brings a new wrinkle in survival, a root that can stave off fever or soothe a wound is worth its weight in whatever passes for local currency. Supply and demand at its most primal. Now, you'd think gathering plants is a solo mission, but no, it's more of a social networking event, linked in, but in a rainforest. Picture this. You're foraging for a particularly elusive herb, and suddenly you're knee-deep in tribal politics. See, the forest isn't just a resource, it's also a contested territory. Tribal alliances are as complex as any modern-day political landscape. Your village might have a pact with the neighbors to share resources, but cross into the wrong territory, and you're looking at a potentially awkward or dangerous situation. So yes, it's like playing chess, but with snakes and jaguars as your audience. Navigating these alliances requires a mix of diplomacy, charm, and an impeccable sense of direction. You'd better remember who's friends with whom, and which paths are off-limits today, because last night's rain might have washed away more than just footprints. It might have blurred the lines of your mental map as well. And speaking of mental maps, let's not forget the practical realities of the jungle. It's a living maze. Those medicinal plants don't come with GPS coordinates. Some are hidden under layers of foliage, while others cling to the sides of trees like nature's version of a high-rise apartment. Take the cinchona tree, for instance. It's your go-to for fever, but finding it can be like searching for a needle in a very green haystack. And once you spot it, you'd better make sure you're not in another tribe's backyard before you start harvesting. But why does this matter? Because every plant you collect is another brick in the wall of your tribe's health and prosperity. It's about maintaining balance between tribes, between nature, and between the spiritual and physical worlds. And let's face it, in a place where every day is a roll of the dice, balance can mean the difference between thriving and merely surviving. As you gather, each leaf and root becomes a lesson in patience and resourcefulness. That root that costs a fortune, it's not just about its healing properties, it's about the effort and risk required to obtain it. It's an investment in your community's future, a hedge against the unpredictable forces of nature. And speaking of unpredictability, let's talk about the wildlife. While you're busy playing botanical broker, the forest is alive with creatures that don't care one bit about your diplomatic efforts. A jaguar on the prowl or a snake lounging in the sun could end your day faster than you can say economic downturn. So awareness is key. Your senses need to be sharper than the thorns you occasionally have to brush aside. So there you have it. Gathering medicinal plants isn't just a walk in the park, or jungle in this case. It's a dance of diplomacy, a lesson in economics, and a test of survival skills, all wrapped up in the vibrant tapestry of the Amazon. As the day progresses, each plant you collect is a testament to your role, not just as a healer, but as a guardian of your community's well-being. And that, my friend, is a responsibility as vast and complex as the jungle itself. And so, having navigated the leafy stock market of the Amazon, you return to the village with your botanical booty. But just as you're about to kick back and enjoy the fruits, or rather roots of your labor, midday arrives, and with it a different kind of challenge, the community consultations. Ah, the life of a shaman, where the spiritual meets the social and the mystical gives way to the mundane. You see, being a shaman isn't just about brewing potions or whispering to the wind. No, you're also the village's unofficial therapist, conflict mediator, and all-around problem solver. Picture the scene. Your village is a bustling hub, not unlike a Renaissance fair but with less jousting and more jungle. The locals gather, each with their own set of woes and worries, and it's your job to sort through it all like an Amazonian agony aunt. First up, the role of healer. Sure, you've got the herbs and the know-how to tackle ailments, but medicine in the 16th century Amazon isn't just about physical recovery, it's about keeping the social fabric from unraveling. A healthy villager is a happy villager, and a happy villager means fewer disputes over whose hammock is swinging too close to the communal fire pit. Health and harmony go hand in hand, and it's your job to keep both in check. Plus, let's be honest, a sick villager means more work for you, and who has time for that in a place where survival is a full-time gig? But healing goes beyond the body. Your role as a mediator is arguably even more critical. Forget about courtroom dramas. This is where the real action is. Take, for instance, the classic land dispute. Two families squabbling over a patch of forest that both claim for hunting. It's your job to step in and prevent a full-blown tribal feud. And while the romanticized version of shamanism might suggest you're invoking spirits for guidance, the reality is a bit more, well, transactional. You're relying on diplomacy, local laws, and maybe a bit of old-fashioned arm twisting to keep the peace. In these consultations, you're not just a spiritual leader, you're a pragmatic problem solver. The stakes are high because in a tight-knit community, even the smallest grudge can fester into something much larger. Like that time when two families couldn't agree on who owned a particularly fertile patch of manioc crops. Your solution? A good old-fashioned compromise, splitting the harvest and, in the process, averting a potential village-wide drama. See, shamanism isn't just about chanting in the moonlight, it's about ensuring that when the sun rises, everyone's still speaking to each other. But let's not gloss over the allure of the mystical. These consultations aren't devoid of ceremony. You might burn a bit of sacred tobacco or offer a blessing to appease the spirits, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because these rituals provide a framework for the mediation process. It's a way to signal that this isn't just gossip time under the palm trees. It's a solemn occasion where grievances are aired and grievances are solved. And speaking of grievances, the village isn't short on them. From disputes over hunting territories to complaints about the noise from the neighbours' late-night festivities, you've got a queue of villagers waiting to unload their troubles. It's like running a 16th century customer service desk without the benefit of a hold button. But here's where the myth-busting comes in. While the image of a shaman might be one of a lone figure communing with nature, the reality is you're more like a community manager, juggling 100 different issues while keeping an eye on the bigger picture. The bigger picture, of course, is social cohesion. In a place where survival depends on cooperation, your role as a mediator is crucial. You're the glue holding it all together, ensuring that personal squabbles don't escalate into something that could threaten the entire village. It's a role that requires tact, patience, and the occasional stern word when two villagers can't see eye to eye on whose turn it is to fetch water from the river. Of course, this doesn't mean you're above using a little mystique to keep things running smoothly. A well-timed prediction or a cryptic warning can work wonders in quelling disputes. After all, sometimes the best way to resolve a conflict is to remind everyone that there are bigger forces at play, forces that might just be watching how they handle that argument over who gets the best seat at the evening fire. In the end, as the midday sun begins its slow descent, you've managed to navigate another round of consultations, leaving the village a little more harmonious than you found it. It's not glamorous work, but then again, real shamanism never was. Forget the Hollywood image of a shaman as a mystical loner. You're more like a jungle diplomat, ensuring that the village's delicate social web remains intact. And so, as the afternoon approaches, you prepare for the next phase of your day. Having dealt with the village's interpersonal dramas, it's time to shift focus to the ceremonial aspects of your role. Because while you've spent the day mediating disputes and healing bodies, there's still a spiritual side to explore. A side that, despite its mystique, is rooted in the very real need to maintain the balance between the seen and the unseen. Stay tuned, because in the world of a 16th century Amazonian shaman, the day is far from over. As the afternoon sun casts its golden glow over the village, you transition from the role of mediator to that of a master of ceremonies. This isn't a simple change of hats, it's a complete shift in focus. You've spent your day untangling the village's social knots, and now it's time to weave a different kind of magic. A key ritual is on the agenda, and let me tell you, it's not just about waving feathers and chanting under the stars. Nope, there's a whole lot of prep work and a dash of superstition that goes into it. First off, let's talk logistics. You might think that a shamanic ritual is all about the spiritual, but here's the kicker. It's as much about project management as it is about connecting with the divine. Step 1. Location, location, location. Unlike today's event planners, you don't have the luxury of a pre-booked venue. You're selecting a spot in the jungle, preferably one without too many mosquitoes or the odd hungry predator. The chosen site needs to be accessible yet secluded, a place where the natural acoustics can enhance your chants, not drown them out. Once the venue is sorted, you gather the necessary materials because, spoiler alert, rituals don't just happen. They require tools, and in the Amazon, that means gathering everything from sacred stones to specific plant leaves. Each item has a purpose, not just for the ceremony, but for ensuring the spirits are appropriately wooed. You'll need that sacred tobacco again and maybe a bit of copal resin for burning. It's not just about the scent, it's about creating an atmosphere that prepares the mind and body for the spiritual journey. Now, let's address the elephant, or should I say, jaguar, in the room, superstition. In the 16th century Amazon, the line between superstition and spirituality is as thin as a reed. You might think of it as a quaint relic of a bygone era, but back then it was a matter of survival. Take the belief that a ritual must start precisely at dusk, for instance. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about timing your ceremony to align with the transition from day to night, a liminal space where the veil between worlds is believed to be thinnest. Miss that window, and you risk offending the spirits, or at least that's the popular belief. As you prepare, you consider the cultural significance of what you're about to do. This is more than a personal journey. It's a communal experience that reinforces the tribe's identity and connection to the world beyond. The ceremony serves as a reminder of your collective heritage, a living history lesson that ties the present to the past. It's not just a performance, it's a reaffirmation of the stories and beliefs that define who you are as a people. Speaking of history, let's debunk a myth or two. The romanticized image of a shaman as a lone figure communing with the cosmos? Not quite accurate. The reality is more like an ancient version of crowd control, mixed with a touch of theatre. You've got villagers gathered around, eagerly awaiting the spectacle. And yes, there's a performative element to it, but it's not just for show. Every gesture, every chant is steeped in meaning, designed to guide your audience along on this spiritual journey. And then there's the economic angle. You didn't think you'd escape that, did you? The ritual isn't just a cultural or spiritual necessity, it's a social investment. It strengthens community bonds, which in turn supports cooperation and resource sharing. A successful ritual means a harmonious village, and a harmonious village is a productive one. It's a cycle as old as time. Keep the spirits happy, keep the villagers happy, keep the jungle in balance. As the sun dips lower, signaling the impending start of the ceremony, you take a moment to appreciate the weight of your role. You're not just a spiritual guide, you're a custodian of tradition, a bridge between the tangible world and the mysteries beyond. It's a responsibility that transcends the individual, binding you to the lineage of shamans who came before you, and just like that, the moment has arrived. With the first star appearing in the sky, the ceremony begins. You lead with a chant, each note carefully modulated to resonate with the rhythm of the forest. It's a soundscape that envelops the audience, drawing them into the sacred space. This isn't just about entertainment, it's an invitation to participate in something larger than themselves, a shared experience that transcends the everyday. As the ritual unfolds, you're reminded that this is as much about grounding your community in the present as it is about invoking the past. The world might be rife with uncertainty. After all, the jungle is unpredictable at best. But in this moment, there is clarity, a sense of purpose that is both humbling and empowering. But let's not get too swept up in the romance. Behind the chants and the incense, there's a very real awareness of the practicalities involved. you've got to keep one ear tuned to the rustling of the forest, ever mindful of potential disruptions. It's not just about channeling the spiritual, it's about ensuring that the physical reality, the snakes, the rain, the occasional territorial dispute doesn't crash the party. As the evening deepens, you guide the ceremony to its conclusion, each step meticulously planned yet fluid enough to adapt to the moment. It's a delicate balance between structure and spontaneity, tradition and innovation. And when it's done, the sense of fulfillment is palpable, a testament to the enduring power of ritual in grounding the human experience. So there you have it, the not-so-glamorous but utterly essential reality of a shamanic ritual in the 16th century Amazon. It's a mix of the mystical and the mundane, a dance of logistics and spirituality, all wrapped up in the vibrant tapestry of tribal life. As the evening winds down, you know there's still more to come, but for now, you've successfully navigated another chapter in the ongoing story of your people. Stay tuned, because in the life of an Amazonian shaman, there's always another adventure just around the corner. As the final echoes of your ceremonial chants fade into the night, the village slowly returns to its usual rhythm, leaving you with a moment to reflect on the day's events. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing that you've played your part in the ancient dance of life and tradition, but let's not sugarcoat it. Being a shaman in the 16th century Amazon isn't all spiritual enlightenment and mystical connections. Nope, it's more like juggling flaming torches while walking a tightrope over a crocodile-infested river. Oh, and did I mention you're doing it all with the looming shadow of European contact creeping onto the horizon? These Europeans, with their metal ships and insatiable curiosity, are the new kids on the block, and they're bringing more than just smallpox and awkward handshakes. They're introducing new trade dynamics, and suddenly your village's meticulously balanced economy, rooted in the barter of medicinal plants and jungle resources, is facing a seismic shift. Forget about the romanticized idea of the noble savage living in untouched harmony with nature. The truth is, adaptability is your tribe's true superpower. And let's face it, survival in the Amazon requires a PhD in resilience and a minor in quick thinking. Consider this. Before these foreign adventurers appeared, your role as a shaman was already complex. You were the healer, the diplomat, the spiritual guide. Now, you're also a cultural ambassador, tasked with navigating the delicate balance between embracing beneficial new technologies and protecting your people's way of life. It's a role that requires not just wisdom, but a keen understanding of human nature and the ever-shifting political landscape. You're not just playing chess, you're playing 4D chess with an invisible opponent whose next move is anyone's guess. Speaking of invisible opponents, let's bust another myth. That whole noble savage trope? It's a load of romanticized nonsense. The idea that indigenous people lived in some sort of untouched paradise, free from conflict and complexity, is as accurate as a wooden sundial in a rainstorm. Your daily life is anything but simple, shaped by the intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and the ever-present threat of nature itself. And while the jungle is a rich tapestry of life, it's also a place where survival demands constant vigilance and adaptability. Now, let's talk numbers. When the Europeans start trading metal tools for local goods, it's not just a swap of shiny objects, it's a shift in economic power. Suddenly the tools you relied on, stone axes and woven baskets, are being replaced by something more durable, more efficient. And while this might seem like a win, it's a double-edged sword, literally. These new tools can increase productivity, but they also increase dependency on foreign goods. It's a classic case of give and take, with the stakes higher than a canopy walk in the middle of a thunderstorm. And let's not forget the cultural exchange, or clash, depending on your perspective. The introduction of new beliefs and customs brings both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, there's a chance to learn and grow, to incorporate new ideas into your own rich tapestry of traditions. On the other, there's the risk of losing your cultural identity, of becoming a footnote in someone else's history book. It's a tightrope walk of epic proportions, and as a shaman, you're right in the middle of it, balancing tradition with the winds of change. As the night deepens, you reflect on the resilience of your culture. Despite the challenges, there's a deep-rooted strength in your people, a strength that has been forged over generations. You're not just surviving, you're thriving, adapting to new realities while holding on to the essence of who you are. It's a testament to the power of tradition, not as a static relic of the past, but as a living, breathing entity that evolves with time. To wrap it all up, let's get real about legacy. In the grand tapestry of history, your role as a shaman isn't just a job, it's a vital thread that weaves together the past, present, and future of your community. You are a custodian of knowledge, a guardian of culture, and a beacon of continuity in a world that's constantly changing. And while the romanticized image of a shaman might be alluring, the reality is far more nuanced and infinitely more fascinating. So, as you sit beneath the starry canopy of the Amazon, take a moment to appreciate the complexity of your existence. You're part of a story that stretches back millennia, a story that continues to unfold with each passing day. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of human spirit. And as you drift into sleep, let that be your final thought. In the grand scheme of things, it's not just about survival, it's about leaving a legacy that echoes through the ages. And that, my friend, is the true magic of being a shaman in the Amazon. In the bustling heart of 3rd century BC Syracuse, where the Mediterranean sun relentlessly kissed the ancient stones, a young Archimedes was about to turn his household into a demonstration of his budding genius. And, incidentally, his family's bewilderment. Imagine this: a makeshift lever, a curious boy, and one very perplexed goat. You might think this sounds like the setup for an ancient sitcom, but it was the start of something much more profound. Syracuse wasn't just any sleepy backwater, it was the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, a thriving trade hub that linked the Greek and Roman worlds. The city's economy was as lively as a Greek symposium after a few amphoras of wine, bustling with merchants, philosophers, and inventors. It was here, amidst the clamour of marketplace haggling and the scent of olive oil mixing with the sea breeze, that Archimedes began to flex his mental muscles. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth does a goat have to do with Archimedes' leap into engineering brilliance? Well, everything. You see, young Archimedes had a mischievous streak that matched his genius. One day, in a fit of curiosity that only a future mathematical mind could muster, he decided to test a principle that would later revolutionize mechanics leverage. Legend has it, he rigged up a lever, using a sturdy branch and a rock to lift a rather heavy object, the family goat. The goat, oblivious to its unwitting role in this early scientific experiment, found itself slowly rising off the ground, bleating in surprise while Archimedes watched, wide-eyed, as theory became reality. This childhood escapade was more than just a prank, it was a foreshadowing of his future revelations. Archimedes was laying the groundwork for the principles that would eventually allow him to boast, "Give me a place to stand, and I shall move the earth." And while moving the earth was an ambitious claim, perhaps a bit of hyperbole to impress the neighbours, the practical applications of his discoveries were anything but exaggerated. But let's not skip ahead. Let's linger a little longer in Syracuse, a place as rich in strategic importance as it was in olives. During this time, Syracuse had to juggle alliances like a circus performer with a penchant for politics. It was a city-state, constantly navigating the treacherous waters between the growing powers of Carthage and Rome. Its economy thrived on trade, benefiting from its strategic position on the Mediterranean's crossroads. This was a world where commerce wasn't just about goods, but about ideas that flowed faster than the wine at a Greek wedding. In this vibrant setting, Archimedes' mind was like a sponge, soaking up the cultural and intellectual ferment around him. His exposure to the economic and political machinations of Syracuse undoubtedly shaped his later inventions. The reality was that Syracuse needed defences as innovative as its thinkers to fend off potential conquerors. Archimedes would later oblige, turning his mind to inventions that made him the ancient world's equivalent of a defence contractor. Despite the romantic tales of Archimedes single-handedly defending Syracuse with his incredible devices, the truth is more nuanced. He lived in a world where necessity was the mother of invention, and necessity, in this context, was often spelled warfare. The political backdrop of Syracuse demanded ingenious solutions, and Archimedes was just the man to provide them. His early understanding of mechanics and mathematics was not just a product of his intellect, but also a response to the economic and military pressures of his time. So, while the story of Archimedes and the goat might seem like a quaint anecdote, it's a glimpse into the mind of a boy who would grow up to challenge the limits of human understanding. It highlights a young genius in a city that was a crucible of innovation. And as we delve further into Archimedes' life, keep in mind that this was just the beginning, a prelude to a career that would leave an indelible mark on history long after the goat had come back down to earth, probably with a tale it couldn't quite articulate to the other barnyard animals. So, as the goat ambled back to its mundane, gravity-bound existence, Archimedes' tale was only beginning to ascend. Fast forward a couple of decades, and we find our genius, now a seasoned thinker, facing a new challenge. Enter King Hero II of Syracuse, a ruler with a gold crown and a trust issue. The king suspected that his new crown might be more alloy than aureate, and who better to solve this metallic mystery than the man who once levitated livestock? Here's where things get bath-time legendary. The tale goes that Archimedes, while contemplating the crown conundrum, decided to take a soak. As he settled into the tub, he noticed the water level rise and, eureka, realized the water displaced equaled the volume of his body. It was a classic light bulb moment, if ancient tubs had been equipped with light bulbs. This principle of buoyancy became the cornerstone of hydrostatics, allowing Archimedes to deduce the crown's density without melting it down. He proved, using this watery revelation, that the crown was indeed diluted with silver. But let's not get too carried away on the waves of this story. Historians suggest this sudsy moment might be more myth than reality. Ancient PR or not, the principle of buoyancy was very real, and its implications monumental. Before Archimedes, the idea that you could measure volume by displacement was as foreign as a Roman in a Greek symposium. With this discovery, he effectively handed the ancient world a new tool to navigate both science and trade. Speaking of trade, let's pause for a moment to consider the economic ripples of Archimedes' discovery. In a world where merchants lived and died by the accuracy of their scales, understanding volume and density was like holding the keys to the treasury. It was a game-changer for an economy built on the trade of goods like grain, olive oil, and precious metals. Now, merchants could verify the purity of their products, ensuring that they weren't getting fleeced by unscrupulous suppliers. Imagine the ancient Yelp reviews. 5 stars. Archimedes helped me confirm my gold was legit, would recommend. But beyond consumer protection, Archimedes' work had broader implications. His principles of hydrostatics underpinned everything from shipbuilding to aqueducts. And let's not forget those famous Roman baths. The Romans, always ones to appreciate a good soak, would later take bathing to luxurious heights. Archimedes' insights into water displacement and flow dynamics were crucial in designing systems that moved water efficiently, a necessity for any self-respecting Roman citizen who fancied a daily dip. Of course, Archimedes' contributions weren't confined to the comfort of a warm bath. His work on buoyancy was just one part of a larger body of research into the physics of fluids. Take his treatise on floating bodies, for example, a text that delved into the equilibrium of objects in liquid. It laid the groundwork for understanding why some things float while others sink, a concept that, while seemingly simple, had profound implications for naval engineering. Shipbuilders could now better understand how to construct vessels that wouldn't end up as seafloor decor, a boon for Syracuse, which relied heavily on maritime trade and defense. And yet, for all his brilliance, Archimedes' bathtub revelation was only the tip of the iceberg, or perhaps more appropriately, the tip of the trireme. His later inventions, inspired by these early insights, would become the stuff of legend. Think of him as the original multitasker, juggling concepts of mathematics, physics, and engineering with the same deftness that Zeus juggled thunderbolts. His mind was a wellspring of innovation, and he wasn't above using a bit of showmanship to share his ideas with the world. Now, back to that bathtub story. While it's tempting to picture Archimedes sprinting through the streets of Syracuse, dripping wet and shouting, "Eureka!" like a madman, it's more likely that this anecdote was spiced up by later generations. The reality? Archimedes probably conducted his experiments in a more controlled environment, trading the chaos of a public bathhouse for the quiet of his workshop. But hey, what's a little embellishment in the pursuit of a good story? After all, even in ancient times, a dash of drama helped sell more scrolls. Nevertheless, what remains indisputable is the impact of Archimedes' findings. They transformed the way people viewed the natural world and laid the groundwork for centuries of scientific exploration. His work on hydrostatics wasn't just a footnote in history, it was a foundation upon which future minds would build. From Galileo to Newton, the great thinkers of the Renaissance and beyond stood on the shoulders of this Sicilian giant. So, as we leave Archimedes to his watery musings, let's appreciate the broader context that made his discoveries possible. He lived in a world of constant flux, where the demands of trade, warfare, and innovation were ever present. His ability to see the hidden patterns in these challenges was what set him apart. And if a bit of mythologizing helped preserve his legacy, who are we to argue? After all, history is as much about the stories we tell as the facts we uncover. Archimedes may have been a man of science, but in the grand narrative of human progress, he was also something of a storyteller, crafting a legacy that would echo through the ages. But Archimedes' storytelling prowess wasn't confined to bathtubs and buoyancy. Fast forward to the siege of Syracuse, around 214 to 212 BC, when our Sicilian genius turned his attention to crafting war machines that would make even Leonardo da Vinci nod in approval. The Romans, ever the persistent conquerors, had their sights set on Syracuse, a gem of strategic importance in the Mediterranean chessboard. And Archimedes, not one to sit idly by while his city faced subjugation, got to work on some of the most legendary, yet often exaggerated defensive measures in military history. Let's start with the claw of Archimedes, or as I like to call it, the ancient world's middle finger to invaders. This contraption, sometimes charmingly referred to as the Iron Hand, was designed to grip and capsize enemy ships getting too cozy with the city walls. Imagine the horror on a Roman soldier's face when his sturdy vessel, the pinnacle of Roman naval engineering, suddenly lifted from the water like a misbehaving toddler at the supermarket. The claw reportedly snatched ships from the sea, giving them a terrifying shake before unceremoniously dropping them back into the water, often with a little less dignity and a lot more seawater in their lungs. Now, let's get real for a moment. Did the claw actually exist as described? Well, maybe. Polybius and Livy, ancient historians with a flair for the dramatic, certainly thought so. They chronicled tales of Roman ships being plucked from the sea like toys from a bathtub, but the technical details are murkier than a Roman bathhouse on discount day. The odds of Archimedes constructing a giant mechanical arm capable of lifting a trireme are about as high as a toga party without wine. Even modern engineers scratch their heads at the logistics. Still, the legend persisted, and that's half the battle in history. Perception can be more powerful than reality. And then there's the death ray. Oh yes, the infamous death ray. Picture this. Archimedes standing on the city walls, directing a series of polished shields or mirrors to focus the sun's rays on unsuspecting Roman ships, transforming them into floating bonfires. It's a story so juicy that it's endured for centuries. But let's hit the pause button and engage our inner skeptic. The idea of setting ships ablaze with concentrated sunlight sounds more like an ancient Greek pyrotechnic display than a practical military strategy. Modern attempts to replicate the death ray from MIT students to Mythbusters typically end in disappointment and some impressive tans. The practicality of aligning enough mirrors to focus the sun's rays on a moving target at sea, while theoretically possible, is about as feasible as roasting marshmallows with a magnifying glass during a solar eclipse. Still, the mere notion of such a device was enough to strike fear into the hearts of the Romans, which might have been the point all along. Sometimes the threat of technology is as potent as its actual deployment. But let's not reduce Archimedes' military contributions to these headline-grabbing devices. The man was a veritable one-man defense department. His inventive mind also devised catapults with greater range and accuracy than their predecessors, turning the city walls into formidable launch pads. These weren't your average trebuchets. They were precision instruments calculated to rain down destruction on Roman legions from a safe distance. Think of it as ancient artillery with a mathematician's touch. Economically speaking, these inventions were invaluable to Syracuse. The city wasn't just defending its autonomy, it was safeguarding its economic lifeline. The Mediterranean trade routes were the arteries of ancient commerce, and control over them meant control over wealth. Archimedes' machines were not just instruments of war, they were investments in the city's future, ensuring that Syracuse remained a player in the regional power dynamics. The cost of constructing these devices was minuscule compared to the potential loss of trade and tribute that Roman domination would entail. But here's a twist for you. Despite all of Archimedes' genius, Syracuse eventually fell to the Romans. Why? Well, even the most brilliant inventions can't compensate for political intrigue and betrayal. According to some accounts, internal treachery opened the gates to the Roman forces. The mighty machines, for all their mechanical marvel, couldn't withstand human duplicity. It's a sobering reminder that in the Game of Thrones, sometimes a well-timed bribe is more effective than a well-aimed catapult. So what does this tell us? That Archimedes, despite being one of history's most brilliant minds, was working in a world where the rules were as much about human nature as they were about physics. His inventions were a testament to human ingenuity, but also a reflection of the perpetual dance between innovation and the harsh realities of war. And while history often remembers the machines, it's the minds behind them that truly leave a legacy. As we wrap up this chapter of Archimedes' life, let's not forget that his contributions to military science were just one facet of his multifaceted career. The siege of Syracuse, with all its drama and mechanical marvels, was a microcosm of a world where necessity bred invention, and invention, in turn, shaped the course of history. But don't worry, this isn't the end of Archimedes' tale. We've still got more ground to cover, literally and figuratively. Stay tuned as we delve further into the life of a man whose genius transcended the battlefield and touched every corner of the ancient world. And so, as Archimedes' genius continued to ripple through the ancient world, we pivot from his military marvels to the cerebral playground where he truly shone, mathematics. Imagine a man who could see the invisible threads connecting numbers and shapes, much like a modern coder visualizes binary dance into complex software. Archimedes was crafting the precursor to calculus and geometry centuries before Newton and Leibniz would famously hash it out over who invented what. Let's start with his work on geometry, where Archimedes wasn't just playing with shapes, he was redefining them. Take the circle, for instance, a simple shape to you and me, but to Archimedes it was a canvas for mathematical wizardry. He calculated the area of a circle with a precision that would make a modern-day GPS blush. How precise, you ask? He essentially pinned pi between 317 and 31071, a miraculous feat for a guy without the luxury of a calculator. With this, he effectively etched his name into the annals of mathematical history, laying the groundwork for everything from architecture to astronomy. His crowning achievement in geometry, though, was the discovery of the relationship between the surface area and volume of a sphere and its circumscribing cylinder. Picture this: a sphere snugly nestled inside a cylinder. Archimedes deduced that the sphere occupied 2/3 of the cylinder's volume and surface area. He was so proud of this discovery that he reportedly wanted it inscribed on his tombstone. Talk about a lasting legacy, defining the world in a way that would outlive empires and emperors. But here's where things get really spicy. Archimedes' proto-calculus. While historians argue over whether he truly understood the concept of infinity, he was certainly flirting with it, using a method remarkably similar to integral calculus. His technique, known as the method of exhaustion, involved inscribing polygons inside circles, gradually increasing the number of sides to approximate the area. Sound familiar? It should. It's the same principle modern mathematicians use to calculate integrals, minus the coffee-fueled all-nighters. Economically, these mathematical insights were jackpots. In Syracuse, a city where trade cart-wheeled over every horizon, understanding geometry meant better ship designs, more efficient market layouts, and fortified defences. It was like having a cheat code to the economic game of the ancient Mediterranean. Merchants could optimize cargo space, architects could push the boundaries of design, and engineers could enhance infrastructure, all thanks to Archimedes' mathematical mind. Yet, for all his genius, let's debunk a myth or two. Archimedes didn't invent calculus outright. Newton and Leibniz still deserve their moment of glory. What he did was lay the mathematical foundations and conceptual frameworks that these later thinkers would build upon. Think of Archimedes as the original architect of a mathematical skyscraper, sketching blueprints on sand while future minds erected the towering structure. Now, let's shift the focus to Archimedes' famed sand reckoner concept, a beautiful illustration of his ability to think big, quite literally. In his treatise, The Sand Reckoner, Archimedes tackled the seemingly absurd question, how many grains of sand would it take to fill the universe? Not exactly a question you'd find on a standard math test, but it highlights his audacity to stretch the limits of contemporary understanding. He devised a system to express incredibly large numbers, challenging the notion that the universe was beyond human comprehension. Archimedes' work here isn't just about numbers, it's a philosophical statement on the human capacity to grasp infinity. In doing so, Archimedes was like a mathematician armed with a stylus and sandpit, standing at the edge of known science, peering into the vast unknown. His calculations expanded the Greek numerical system by introducing a way to handle large numbers, a precursor to the concept of exponents. This wasn't just a mathematical parlor trick, it was a profound leap forward in thinking, akin to teaching a caveman about quantum physics. And let's not overlook the social backdrop that made these leaps possible. Archimedes lived in a world where intellectual discourse was the currency of the elite. Syracuse, with its bustling agora and vibrant exchange of ideas, was the perfect incubator for his genius. The city was a melting pot of Greek, Roman, and local Sicilian influences, creating a unique intellectual climate where new ideas could flourish. In this context, Archimedes was not just a solitary thinker, but a product of his environment, shaped by the cultural and economic forces around him. Yet, for all his intellect, Archimedes was still a man of his time, navigating the same social hierarchies and political intrigues as everyone else. His work was not just about advancing knowledge, it was also about securing patronage and prestige. The Greek world was rife with competition among scholars, each vying for the attention of wealthy benefactors. Archimedes' ability to blend practical applications with theoretical brilliance made him a standout figure, ensuring his place in the annals of history. In the end, Archimedes was more than just a mathematician. He was a visionary who dared to see beyond the horizon. His work laid the groundwork for future generations, challenging them to think bigger and reach further. And while he may not have had a supercomputer or even a decent abacus, his mind was a computational powerhouse, capable of solving problems that still baffle us today. As we pause in our exploration of his life, let's remember that Archimedes was a bridge between the known and the unknown, a pioneer who ventured into the abstract terrain of mathematics and returned with discoveries that continue to shape our world. But don't pack up your toolkit just yet. There's more to uncover about this ancient genius in our next chapter. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the life and legacy of Archimedes, the man who moved the world with his mind. As we delve deeper into the life and legacy of Archimedes, it's time to confront the final act of his remarkable story, his untimely demise during the siege of Syracuse and the enduring legends that have since enshrined his name in the pantheon of scientific giants. You see, Archimedes wasn't just a mathematician or an engineer. He was a man whose brilliance shone so brightly that even the chaos of war couldn't dim it, until it did. Picture Syracuse in 212 BC, a city under siege, its once thriving economy grinding to a halt under the relentless pressure of Roman legions. Archimedes, now an elderly man, was still tinkering away in his workshop, oblivious to the impending doom outside his door. The siege had dragged on for 2 long years, a testament to the defensive ingenuity of Archimedes and his fellow Syracusans. But all good things, or in this case, all stubborn resistances, must come to an end. The Romans, led by the tenacious Marcus Claudius Marcellus, finally breached the city walls. And here, in the midst of chaos and conquest, Archimedes met his end. Now, the story of Archimedes' death has been dressed up with a bit of dramatic flair over the centuries. According to the most popular version, a Roman soldier found Archimedes doodling geometric figures in the sand, so engrossed in his work that he didn't notice the soldier's approach. When ordered to go with the soldier, Archimedes reportedly replied, "Do not disturb my circles," a line so iconic it practically demands its own spotlight in the annals of last words. Unfortunately, the soldier, not one for patience or respect for genius, allegedly struck him down right then and there. But let's pump the brakes on this romanticized narrative. While it's a tale that's easy to love, the historical accuracy is, shall we say, questionable. Ancient historians like Plutarch and Livy, our primary sources for this story, were writing long after the fact, injecting a healthy dose of legend into the mix. The reality? Archimedes was more likely a casualty of the indiscriminate violence that accompanies any city's sack. The soldier probably wasn't aware he'd just snuffed out one of history's brightest flames. Economically, the fall of Syracuse was a seismic event. The city, a linchpin in the Mediterranean's trading network, was absorbed into the Roman Republic, which stretched its influence further across the ancient world. Archimedes' death symbolized not just the loss of a great mind, but the end of Syracuse's golden age of innovation, an era where economic prosperity and intellectual curiosity thrived hand in hand. With the city under Roman control, its economic policies and systems were restructured to benefit Rome, a common practice in the ancient world where the victors didn't just claim territory, but also its wealth and resources. And yet, Archimedes' legacy transcended the fall of his city. His works, preserved through the meticulous copying of manuscripts, became the bedrock of mathematical and scientific study for centuries to come. The Middle Ages saw his treatises translated into Arabic, sparking a renaissance in Islamic science and mathematics. Later, during the European Renaissance, his writings inspired a new wave of thinkers like Galileo and Newton, who stood on the shoulders of this ancient Sicilian giant to reach even greater heights. But let's not get too misty-eyed. While Archimedes was undeniably a genius, it's crucial to acknowledge that his innovations weren't the result of solitary genius alone. His work was deeply rooted in the socio-economic and political fabric of Syracuse, an environment that valued and invested in intellectual prowess. His machines served the immediate needs of his city, defending its walls and maintaining its autonomy. His mathematical explorations, though visionary, were driven by practical challenges, whether it was calculating the volume of a king's crown or optimizing the efficiency of a catapult. In reflecting on his legacy, it's also worth noting the power of myth in shaping historical narratives. The tales of Archimedes' war machines, his eureka moment, and his death have been embellished over time, perhaps to make his life more palatable to the human penchant for storytelling. Myths, after all, serve a purpose. They enshrine values, inspire future generations, and celebrate human potential. Archimedes' story, in all its mythologized glory, does just that. So what is the real legacy of Archimedes? It's the reminder that innovation is often born of necessity, that even the most brilliant minds are products of their time and place. It's the enduring influence of his mathematical principles, which continue to underpin the technologies we rely on today. It's a testament to the idea that knowledge, once unleashed, knows no boundaries and respects no conquerors. Even as the Romans laid waste to Syracuse, they unknowingly preserved and propagated the intellectual riches of Archimedes' work, recognizing in it the seeds of their own future advancements. In the end, Archimedes' life and legacy teach us that history is a tapestry woven with threads of fact and fiction, science and story. His contributions remind us that the quest for knowledge is both timeless and universal, transcending the confines of culture, language, and time. As we close this chapter on Archimedes, let's appreciate the enduring impact of his work and the ways in which his story, myths and all, continues to inspire generations to dream bigger, reach further, and, perhaps most importantly, never disturb the circles of those lost in thought. In the bustling markets of the Tang Dynasty, silk was the currency that spun the world on its axis. Picture a society where silk wasn't just a fabric, it was the Bitcoin of its day, a volatile powerhouse of wealth and status. Everyone coveted it, from emperors to merchants, and like any good cryptocurrency, its value could skyrocket or plummet based on the whims of the market. But let's hit the rewind button and explore how this shimmering fabric became the stuff of legends during China's golden age of silkworm supremacy. The Tang Dynasty, strutting from 6118 to 9707 AD, wasn't just any old stretch of Chinese history. It was a time when China's economy was booming like a 90s .com startup, yet with a tad more staying power. Trade routes, like the legendary Silk Road, were the veins through which wealth and culture flowed. The Tang capital, Chang'an, was the epicenter of this prosperity, a cosmopolitan melting pot where traders, scholars and adventurers mingled like celebrities at an after-party. Now, back to silk, the ancient world's most luxurious fabric. It was the high-stakes game that everyone wanted in on. Romans, Persians, and Byzantines were all at the mercy of this delicate thread. You couldn't just walk into a market and casually pick up a bolt of silk. Oh no, silk was the stuff of emperors and elite traders, and the price tag often matched that of a small kingdom's GDP. This wasn't your grandma's quilting cotton. This was the elite textile equivalent of a Lamborghini. So, how did the Tang Dynasty become the Silicon Valley of silk? It all starts with some seriously dedicated caterpillars. Meet the Bombax mori, the silkworm that munches on mulberry leaves like it's training for the Caterpillar Olympics. These little critters were the secret sauce behind the dynasty's silk supremacy. They spun threads so fine and strong, it was basically nature showing off. The production process was no walk in the imperial park either. It required a delicate balance of biology, chemistry, and an almost monastic dedication to detail. Silk production was the OG cottage industry, with families meticulously raising silkworms in their homes. Once those silkworms had munched their way to glory, they would spin cocoons of raw silk, which were then painstakingly unravelled. Imagine the patience of a monk untangling a ball of yarn, and you'll get the picture. The resulting threads were then dyed and woven into the fabric that would dress emperors and adorn palaces. A single thread of silk might be as thin as a human hair, but when woven together, it created a fabric so valuable it was once used to pay off Roman soldiers. And why was silk so coveted, you ask? Its allure wasn't just about aesthetics, though its shimmering texture certainly didn't hurt. Silk was practical cool in summer, warm in winter, and resistant to mold and moths. A miracle fabric, if ever there was one. It wasn't just clothes that benefited from this wonder textile either. Silk was used in everything from writing materials to fishing lines and even musical instruments. Talk about multitasking. The Tang dynasty's silk industry was a tight-knit affair, with production secrets guarded as closely as state secrets. Penalties for leaking these secrets were severe, ensuring that China maintained its monopoly for centuries. No wonder everyone wanted a piece of the action. Europe's obsession with silk led to tales of merchants who would go to great lengths, even risking life and limb, to get their hands on it. It was as if silk threads themselves were woven with the promise of wealth and intrigue. In the grand tapestry of history, the Tang dynasty stands out as a time when silk was more than just a fabric. It was an economic powerhouse, a symbol of cultural exchange, and a testament to human ingenuity. As we unravel the threads of this fascinating era, it becomes clear that silk was not just woven into the fabric of society. It was the fabric. From the mulberry leaves to the bustling markets of Chang'an, the story of Tang silk is one of innovation, ambition, and a little bit of silkworm magic. As the shimmering threads of silk were woven not just into the fabric of society, but into the very identity of the Tang dynasty, it's time to shift our gaze from the bustling markets of Chang'an to the weaving workshops where the real magic happened. We're talking about a place where innovation whirred alongside the looms, and patience was as essential as the silk threads themselves. If you've ever marveled at a complex brocade pattern and thought, this looks like it took a millennium and a half to make, you wouldn't be far off. The Tang-era weaving techniques were the ancient world's equivalent of a Silicon Valley startup, a blend of breakthrough ideas and sheer determination. Just swap out the coffee for tea, and you've got the picture. At the center of it all was the draw loom, a mechanical marvel that dates back to the 2nd century AD. This beast of a machine was the iPhone of its day. Game-changing, yet requiring a manual thicker than a monastery door. It allowed weavers to create intricate patterns by controlling individual threads, a technique that led to the production of damasks and brocades so complex they made your grandma's crochet look like child's play. The draw loom wasn't just a tool, it was a status symbol. Owning one was like having a Tesla parked in your driveway, except instead of reducing your carbon footprint, it increased your social standing. The loom's ability to produce patterns with up to 200 warp threads was nothing short of revolutionary. And the weavers? They were the rock stars of their time, wielding their shuttles with the precision of a surgeon and the flair of an artist. Picture them in their workshops, hands moving faster than gossip in a small town, weaving tales of dragons and phoenixes into the fabric in a mesmerizing dance of dexterity and skill. But let's not get too starry-eyed. The reality of silk weaving was far from glamorous. From archaeological findings and historical records, we know that the process required a level of dedication that bordered on obsession. Weavers often worked in stifling conditions, surrounded by the ever-present clatter of looms and the scent of dye vats. Forget about union breaks or ergonomic chairs. If you were a Tang weaver, you were in it for the long haul, often working from dawn till dusk with only a few breaks to sip some green tea or nibble on a rice ball. These artisans were the unsung heroes of the silk industry, their handiwork fueling an economic machine that drove the Tang Dynasty to its zenith. Each piece of brocade or damask was a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance, a tapestry of innovation woven from the looms of history. Yet, for all the romanticism, it's worth remembering that the silk trade was as cutthroat as any modern business. Quality control was brutal. One slip of the shuttle, and a whole week's work could go down the drain faster than a Tang poet's reputation after a night of too much bijou. And what of the silk itself, that fabled fabric that inspired poetry and incited wars? The Tang dynasty was rife with myths about its supposed mystical properties. Some believed silk was imbued with the essence of the mulberry leaf, granting it protective powers against evil spirits. Others thought it could bestow longevity or enhance one's social aura to Kardashian levels. But let's burst that bubble right here. While silk is undeniably a versatile and durable material, it's not going to ward off demons or make you live forever. Sorry folks, no magic capes here. Just a testament to the human knack for imbuing everyday items with a touch of the divine. Still, the myths surrounding silk were not without their charm, adding a layer of allure to a fabric that was already a hot commodity. Who wouldn't want to believe their tunic was spun from threads blessed by the gods? Yet, the true magic lay not in supernatural forces, but in the hands of those who spun the threads and the minds that devised the looms. The Tang weavers were the unsung dreamers, crafting not just textiles, but narratives that would outlast their own lifetimes. As we weave through the tapestry of Tang-era silk, it becomes clear that the true legacy of these techniques lies not only in their beauty, but in their ability to transcend time, capturing the imagination of generations to come. The next time you admire a piece of brocade, remember the innovation and toil that went into each thread. It's a story of creativity and perseverance, spun from the heart of an era that valued silk as much as it did the stars in the sky. And as we continue to unravel this historical yarn, it's worth pondering what other threads we might discover in the loom of time. As we continue to unravel the threads of history, let's shift our focus to the socio-political landscape that silk helped weave in the Tang Dynasty. Here, silk wasn't just the fabric of emperors, it was the fabric of society, shaping lives and livelihoods with every thread. But before you imagine a Disney-esque scene of happy weavers merrily spinning away, let's cut the loom and get real about the nitty-gritty of the silk industry. First, let's talk about the weavers, the unsung heroes and heroines behind the loom. The romantic notion of the happy artisan is as much a myth as the idea of silk warding off evil spirits. In reality, these weavers worked under conditions that would make even the most hardened gig economy worker wince. Long hours, meagre wages, and a constant pressure to produce perfection were their daily grind. This wasn't a labour of love, it was a labour of necessity, often dictated by an unforgiving market that didn't hesitate to crack the whip or the loom on subpar output. In fact, archaeological evidence suggests that many weavers were bound by contracts that were as tight as their warp threads, leaving little room for error or negotiation. On top of this, the gender dynamics in the silk industry were as complex as the brocades themselves. Women often played a central role in silk production, from tending to the silkworms to weaving the final product. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking this was some utopian feminist paradise. While women were indispensable to the process, they were also often confined to the lower rungs of the social ladder, their labour undervalued and underpaid. According to historical records, women weavers earned significantly less than their male counterparts, despite contributing equally, if not more, to the production process. So much for equal pay for equal work. Now, let's zoom out and consider the merchants, the middlemen of the silk trade. If the weavers were the hands that spun the silk, the merchants were the feet that walked it across continents. These were not the smooth-talking, velvet-clad traders of Hollywood lore. No, these folks were more like the endurance athletes of the ancient world, navigating treacherous terrains, dodging bandits, and haggling over tariffs that could make or break a deal. The Silk Road, often romanticized as a mystical highway of trade and cultural exchange, was more akin to a grueling marathon with a side of survival training. The Silk Road stretched over 4,000 miles, connecting Chang'an to the Mediterranean, and it was anything but a leisurely stroll. Merchants faced numerous hurdles, from harsh climates to political unrest, not to mention the ever-present threat of bandits who were as eager to get their hands on silk as a millennial on a Black Friday sale. And if that wasn't enough, there were the tariffs, those pesky tolls that local rulers imposed on goods passing through their territories. It's safe to say that for every yard of silk that reached its destination, gallons of sweat were shed along the way. The socio-political implications of the silk industry were profound, influencing everything from local economies to international relations. Silk wasn't just a commodity, it was a diplomatic tool, a symbol of status that could open doors or slam them shut. Emperors used silk as a means of forging alliances, gifting it to foreign dignitaries as a gesture of goodwill or as a subtle flex of their own wealth and power. In some cases, silk was even used to pay tribute to neighbouring states, a testament to its value as a currency in its own right. Yet, for all its economic and political significance, the silk industry also highlighted the stark disparities in Tang society. While the elite draped themselves in luxurious robes, the weavers and merchants toiled in the shadows, their contributions often overlooked or undervalued. It's a tale as old as time, the few prospering at the expense of the many, a narrative that still resonates in today's world of fast fashion and exploitative labour practices. But let's not end on a sombre note. The story of Tang silk is also one of resilience and ingenuity, of ordinary people crafting extraordinary legacies. Whether they were weavers perfecting their craft or merchants navigating the perils of the Silk Road, these individuals played a crucial role in creating a fabric that would leave an indelible mark on history. And as we continue to explore this rich tapestry, let's remember the hands and feet that wove it, the unsung dreamers whose stories are as intricate as the patterns they created. The journey isn't over yet. There are still more threads to unravel, more tales to tell in this woven chronicle of silk, society, and survival. And so, the saga continues. Silk, that illustrious fabric, didn't just stay home and wave politely from the porch. It hit the road, making its grand entrance onto the international stage, enveloping continents in its luxurious embrace, like a celebrity on a never-ending world tour. From the regal courts of Japan to the opulent villas of Rome, Tang silk was the must-have accessory, the original influencer of the ancient fashion world. Now, let's tackle the logistics of this transcontinental silk parade. You'd think getting silk from Chang'an to Rome was as simple as mailing a postcard. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. We're talking about a journey that could take months, spanning over 4,000 miles of varied terrain that would make even the hardiest of road warriors break a sweat. The Silk Road, a name that conjures images of camel caravans and bustling bazaars, was the artery through which this precious fabric flowed. But let's be real, it was more like the obstacle course from hell, featuring everything from scorching deserts to towering mountain passes. And those bandits we mentioned? They were as eager to pounce on a silk shipment as a bargain hunter on Cyber Monday. But for those who braved the Silk Road, the rewards were immense. Tang silk was a game-changer, a diplomatic olive branch, and a status symbol all rolled into one. In Japan, it adorned the nobility, becoming a staple in the imperial court's wardrobe. Japanese aristocrats couldn't get enough of the stuff, and silk even found its way into religious rites and ceremonies. Meanwhile, in the Byzantine Empire, silk was all the rage. So much so that Emperor Justinian decided he couldn't just keep importing it, he needed to produce it. Spoiler alert, this is where things get a little James Bond. Enter the monks. These weren't your average cloistered souls. They were industrial spies with a divine mission. Legend has it that in the 6th century, 2 monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China in hollowed-out bamboo canes, effectively ending the Chinese monopoly on silk production. It's the kind of tale that sounds too good to be true, and maybe it is. But hey, who doesn't love a good yarn? The reality is, while the story may have been embellished over time, the fact remains that somehow, someway, the secrets of silk production slipped through China's silk curtains and into the hands of eager competitors. This kind of industrial espionage wasn't just about getting rich quick. It was a geopolitical maneuver, a way for empires to flex their muscles without drawing swords. Silk diplomacy was a thing, folks, and it was as much about PR as it was about the goods themselves. Gift, a bolt of Tang silk to a foreign dignitary, and you weren't just giving them a piece of fabric, you were handing over a symbol of power, wealth, and sophistication. These gifts weren't just tokens of goodwill, they were strategic moves in a high-stakes game of international chess. Of course, for every story of silk diplomacy, there's a myth that needs busting. Take, for instance, the idea that silk was used to buy peace with nomadic tribes along the Silk Road. While it's true that silk was sometimes used in tribute payments, the notion that it single-handedly kept the peace is a bit of a stretch. The reality was far more complex, involving a mix of trade agreements, military force, and, yes, the occasional bolt of silk. It was diplomacy with a dash of fabric, not fabric with a side of diplomacy. And speaking of myths, let's not forget the romanticized image of the Silk Road as a harmonious highway of cultural exchange. Sure, there was some of that, but it was also a place of cutthroat competition and economic warfare. Merchants weren't just exchanging goods, they were navigating a minefield of tariffs, taxes, and trade barriers. Imagine trying to sell your wares while dodging tariffs as unpredictable as a reality TV star's career. 1 minute they're up, the next they're down. It was the Wild West, with silk as the currency of choice. Yet, for all the chaos and complexity, the impact of Tang silk on the international stage was profound. It transcended borders, weaving a tapestry of cultural connections that would influence art, fashion, and economics for centuries to come. In many ways, silk was the ultimate connector, a tangible link between East and West, a thread that bound diverse cultures in a shared appreciation for beauty and craftsmanship. As we continue this journey through the world of Tang silk, remember that behind every shimmering thread is a story of ambition, intrigue, and a touch of human folly. It's a world where nothing is quite as it seems, where the elegance of silk masks a reality as intricate as the patterns woven into its fabric. And while we haven't reached the end of this historical runway, rest assured there's still plenty of material to explore. More tales to tell, more myths to debunk, and more threads to unravel in the grand tapestry of Tang silk. But let's not just hang the silk of Tang legacy on the mythical clothesline of yore. The real question is, what did all this weaving hustle mean for the dynasties that followed? Picture this. The Song Dynasty, strutting onto the scene in 960 AD, had some pretty big silk shoes to fill. With Tang silk weaving techniques as their blueprint, the Song artisans didn't just rest on their mulberry leaves. They kicked it up a notch, perfecting the art of silk production to new heights. It was like taking the Mona Lisa and giving her a 4K upgrade. Now, the Song dynasty wasn't just about making prettier patterns. They were the Steve Jobs of their time. Innovation was their jam. By the 12th century, they had developed advanced looms that could weave increasingly complex and colourful designs, putting the Tang's already intricate brocades to shame. Imagine silk garments that weren't just eye candy, but a full-blown visual feast. And the economy? Well, it was spinning faster than a DJ's turntable. The Song silk industry was so lucrative that it turned entire cities into textile hubs, with silk production accounting for a significant chunk of the empire's GDP. We're talking about a silk-induced economic renaissance, my friends. But here's where it gets interesting. The Mongols, those infamous conquerors who rarely met a civilization they didn't want to pillage, took a detour on the Silk Road. When they established the Yuan dynasty in the late 13th century, they didn't just ride in and burn everything to the ground. Instead, they embraced the silk trade like it was an irresistible dessert buffet. Kublai Khan, the Grand Poobah of the Mongol Empire, took one look at the silk industry and thought, why destroy what you can profit from? He turned the Yuan dynasty into a silk powerhouse, using it as a diplomatic tool to curry favor with European courts. The silk trade flourished under Mongol rule, proving that even the fiercest warriors couldn't resist the allure of a good fabric. Fast forward to the Ming dynasty, which took the silk baton in 1368 and sprinted with it. The Ming saw silk as a badge of cultural superiority, and they weren't shy about showing it off. They ramped up production, flooding both domestic and international markets with silk that was finer than a stand-up comedian's timing. It was during this era that silk became an integral part of Chinese cultural identity, symbolizing elegance and refinement. The Ming dynasty even established the imperial silk factory in Nanjing, a move that was the 15th century equivalent of setting up a tech hub in Silicon Valley. Yet, despite all these advancements, the legacy of Tang silk weaving wasn't just about who could weave the fanciest fabric or rake in the most coin. It was about how those threads connected people across time and space. The Tang Dynasty's innovations laid the groundwork for a global textile industry that continues to evolve today. Think about it. The techniques refined over 1,000 years ago still echo in modern textile art, from the intricate patterns of haute couture to the everyday elegance of a well-tailored suit. And here's the kicker. Tang silk weaving wasn't just about commerce or fashion. It was a testament to the power of cultural exchange. The Silk Road wasn't a one-way street. It was a bustling thoroughfare of ideas, art, and technology. The Tang Dynasty's openness to foreign influence, whether through trade or diplomacy, set the stage for a cultural melting pot that enriched not just China, but the world. It's a reminder that when we open ourselves to new ideas, we don't just innovate, we elevate. Sure, the myths surrounding Tang silk are tantalizing, a heady mix of espionage and allure. But the reality is even more compelling. It's a story of human ingenuity and resilience, of ordinary people weaving extraordinary legacies with every thread. As we wrap up this historical yarn, remember that the legacy of Tang silk is more than just a fabric. It's a tapestry of ambition, creativity, and cultural connectivity. In the end, the Tang dynasty didn't just weave silk, they wove the world together, creating a legacy that's more than the sum of its shimmering parts. So the next time you slip into a silk shirt or admire a piece of textile art, spare a thought for the dynasties that dared to dream and the humble silkworms that made it all possible. Because sometimes the threads of reality truly are more fascinating than the fabrications of myth. And that, dear listeners, is the real magic of history. The sun is barely peeking over the horizon, and you're already up, feet brushing against dew-damp grass. The day in 1st century BC Gaul promises the same rhythm as always, yet you feel the anticipation thrumming beneath your skin. You're a Celtic bard after all, and in a world where words are as powerful as swords, your tongue is your weapon of choice. But before you can weave your tales and shape the minds of your fellow Gauls, you've got a little prep work to do. It's not all glamour and glory, despite what the ballads might say. First up, gathering materials. Not for writing, obviously. Parchment? Ha! That's a Roman thing. You're talking about the raw stuff of stories, the whispers of the woods, the rustle of leaves, the way the river sings as it snakes through the valley. You're collecting the essence of your landscape to weave into your tales. And let's face it, you need to keep your voice in top form. A bard without a voice is like a warrior without a sword. So, a little morning vocal exercise. It is, perhaps accompanied by a quick swig of mead if you're feeling particularly indulgent. As you wander through the misty morning, you can't help but think about your role in this sprawling Celtic society. You're not just some wandering minstrel. You're the original influencer, long before hashtags and viral posts were even a glimmer in humanity's eye. You shape public opinion with every verse you spin and every story you tell. You've got the power to sway hearts, stir anger, or soothe sorrows. And that's not just poetic fluff, it's a hefty responsibility. Bards like you were said to hold more sway than some chieftains, which sounds impressive, until you remember that if you mess up, well, the same chieftains might be inclined to remind you of your mortality. You're basically the media of your time, but without the annoying ads. Your stories are the news, your songs the op-eds. And while today's social media influencers might sweat over losing followers, you've got the very real prospect of losing your head if you offend the wrong person with a poorly chosen rhyme. Talk about pressure. Now, let's talk logistics. Being a bard isn't just about having a flair for the dramatic. It's about memory, huge, towering feats of memory. The kind of memory that makes modern people look like goldfish. You're memorizing thousands of lines of oral literature. That's right, thousands. You're not just reciting these, you're living them, breathing life into them so that the stories can leap from your lips, fully formed and vibrant. To put it in perspective, if the average Shakespearean play is about 30,000 words, you're committing to memory at least that much, if not more. No pressure, right? The trick, as you know well, is repetition. Lots of it. And maybe a little divine inspiration. You've got techniques, honed over years, to keep it all in your head. Mnemonics, rhythm, rhyme. It's a bit like a mental acrobatics routine, and you're the star performer. As you prepare for the day, you can't help but muse on the myths that swirl around your kind. The romantic image of the wandering bard, a lone figure against the backdrop of a misty hilltop, harp in hand, spinning tales as old as time. It's a nice image, sure, but it glosses over the mud, the rain, and the long days spent trudging from one settlement to the next. The reality is a bit grittier, a bit more grounded. Yet there's a certain magic to it, isn't there? The kind that keeps you going, even as your feet ache and your voice sometimes cracks. Before the day truly kicks off, you take a moment to reflect on why any of this matters. It's not just about entertaining the masses. It's about preserving the past, shaping the future, and, perhaps most importantly, providing a mirror to society. You hold up that mirror with every tale, every song, and every carefully crafted word. You remind people of who they are, who they were, and who they might yet become. In a world as unpredictable as this, isn't that the real magic? You shake off the morning's musings, feeling the pull of the day's duties. It's time to head to a local gathering, a place where the heartbeat of 1st century BC Gaul is most palpable. These gatherings, often called assemblies or councils, are the social media platforms of your day, minus the cat memes but full of drama, alliances, and the occasional skirmish. Picture this. Tribes from miles around converge at these assemblies to trade, negotiate, and sometimes just to size each other up. It's like a medieval market crossed with a reality show, where the stakes are high and the cloaks are higher. Speaking of cloaks, let's talk economics. A decent cloak, the kind that shields you from the notorious Gaulish rain, could set you back a couple of sheep, or the equivalent in silver. Not cheap, but essential, unless you want to show up looking like a drowned druid. Travelling between tribes isn't a stroll in a Roman park. It's a logistical dance that involves navigating muddy paths, dense forests, and the occasional territorial boar. On a good day, you might cover 20 miles if you're on foot, which is about the distance from Paris to Disneyland, minus the rides. But instead of Mickey Mouse, you're greeted by tribal chieftains who expect you to perform your verbal acrobatics. Now, these gatherings are more than just social mixes. They're the economic lifeblood of the region. Imagine the bustling activity, traders hawking their wares, artisans displaying their crafts, cattle lowing as they're driven to market. It's a cacophony of sound and smell, a sensory overload that would make any modern flea market look like a quiet afternoon tea. But here's the kicker. Bards like you aren't just the entertainment. You're the mediators, the diplomats in the flowing robes, the ones who can smooth over disputes with a well-placed story or ignite a rebellion with a biting satire. You're the original spin doctors, skilled at navigating the political currents that swirl around these gatherings. Take, for instance, a classic tribal dispute over grazing rights or a boundary disagreement. These aren't mere squabbles, they're potential powder kegs. Enter you, the bard, weaving a tale that reminds everyone of their shared ancestry or the folly of internal strife when the Romans are breathing down everyone's necks. It's a high-wire act of diplomacy, where your words are the balance pole keeping you from plunging into chaos. The political dynamics at play are as intricate as one of your own verses. Tribes are constantly jostling for power, forming alliances that can shift with the next sunrise. It's a delicate dance, one where the wrong word can lead to a feud, but the right one can forge a lasting peace. And as a bard, you're privy to the inner workings of these negotiations, a trusted confidant who must tread carefully lest you find yourself at the sharp end of a spear. But let's not romanticize it too much. The life of a bard, for all its influence, isn't all glamorous. There's mud, there are blisters, and there's the constant threat of being caught in the crossfire of tribal politics. Yet, despite the hazards, there's a certain allure to it all, a sense of purpose that comes from knowing your words matter. As you make your way to the gathering, you reflect on the myths that surround your profession. The image of the bard as a mysterious, almost magical figure persists, yet the reality is much grittier. Sure, you've got the charisma and the tales that captivate, but you're also the one who must deal with the practicalities of travel, the economics of survival, and the politics of the tribes. It's a balancing act, but one that's as old as the tales you tell. In this world where the spoken word reigns supreme, you hold a unique power. You are the keeper of stories, the voice of the people, and sometimes the conscience of a nation. And as you approach the gathering, the anticipation builds. Today, you'll weave your stories into the fabric of this vibrant, chaotic society, leaving an indelible mark in the process. But for now, you adjust your cloak, steady your voice, and prepare to step into the fray. After all, the day is young, and history waits for no one. As you step into the heart of the gathering, the buzz of anticipation is palpable. Bards like you are the rock stars of 1st century BC, Gaul minus the screaming fans and pyrotechnics, but you do have a captive audience. Today, you're not just here to entertain, you're the cultural linchpin holding this whole chaotic tapestry together. Now, let's get one thing straight. The myth of the bard strolling in and whipping up verses on the fly, like some ancient freestyle rapper, is just that, a myth. Sure, the idea of spontaneous genius is romantic, but the reality would have you choking on your mead. Your performances are meticulously crafted, rehearsed, and honed over countless hours. It's more akin to a Shakespearean actor than an improv comedian. Remember, you're carrying the weight of cultural history on your shoulders, not just spouting off the top of your head. Your tools of the trade are as essential as your voice. A harp, for instance, isn't just a prop, it's an extension of your storytelling arsenal. The harp's delicate strings can evoke the subtle nuances of a tale, while the lyre, with its more robust sound, can underscore the epic battles or poignant tragedies of your stories. These instruments aren't just handed to you with a good luck and a pat on the back. Mastering them requires years of diligent practice, often starting from childhood. Think of it like learning to play the violin while also memorizing the complete works of Homer. No small feat. The economic impact of your performances is substantial. You're not just a lone wolf howling at the moon. You're part of a broader economic ecosystem. Your tales bring people together, which is exactly what the tribal chieftains want. In a society where cohesion is as fragile as a dew-kissed spiderweb, your ability to weave a narrative that unites rather than divides is invaluable. You're contributing to the social glue that holds these tribes together, preventing them from splintering under the pressure of external threats, like those pesky Romans lurking south of the border. Speaking of economics, let's talk about the bardic hustle. You may not be rolling in gold, but your performances can earn you a fair bit of barter or coin. A well-told saga could earn you a few chickens, perhaps even a pig if you've really struck a chord. Not exactly a king's ransom, but enough to keep your belly full and your feet on the road. And in a world where survival often hinges on the strength of your community, the goodwill you generate is worth its weight in gold, or at least in mead. The role of a bard isn't just about keeping the peace. It's about maintaining historical continuity. You're the living, breathing Wikipedia of your time. Your stories preserve the history, the legends, and the moral codes of your people. Without you, the past would slip into obscurity faster than a Gaulish summer shower. And while today's historians might pore over dusty tomes, you're the one ensuring those tales survive long enough to be written down in the first place. Let's not overlook the social dynamics at play here. Your ability to sway public opinion with a well-timed story makes you a valuable asset and a potential threat. Chieftains might seek your favor to bolster their own standing, offering gifts or patronage in exchange for a flattering verse or two. But this is a double-edged sword. Speak too favorably of one leader, and you risk alienating his rivals. Tread lightly, my friend, for the line between praise and peril is razor-thin. In the end, being a bard is less about the romanticized image of the lone wanderer and more about being the connective tissue of society. You're the bridge between past and present, the voice that echoes through the ages, ensuring that when the dust settles, your people will remember who they are and where they come from. It's a heavy burden, sure, but one you carry with pride. As the sun reaches its zenith, the crowd gathers, eager for the stories that will transport them from the mundane to the magical. You take a deep breath, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves that accompanies every performance. But you've got this. With a practiced hand, you pluck the strings of your harp, and the first notes ripple through the air. The crowd stills, all eyes on you, waiting for the tales that will captivate and connect them, if only for a moment. You launch into a saga, your voice rising and falling like the hills that surround this gathering. Your words paint vivid pictures, leading your listeners through epic battles and tender romances, through the triumphs and tragedies that define their world. It's not just entertainment, It's a shared experience that binds this disparate group together, reminding them of their shared history and common dreams. And as you weave your tales, you can't help but reflect on the power of the spoken word. In an age where most stories are ephemeral, disappearing with the evening breeze, your words carry weight. They shape perceptions, influence decisions, and, perhaps most importantly, remind these people of their shared humanity. As your performance draws to a close, the applause is thunderous, a testament to the connection you forged with your audience. You take a bow, feeling the warmth of their appreciation like a cloak against the chill of the northern breeze. It's moments like these that remind you why you do what you do, why you endure the hardships and the uncertainties of life on the road. But there's no time to bask in the applause. The day is far from over, and there are more stories to be told, more hearts to touch. You gather your instruments, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on your shoulders once more. With a final nod to the crowd, you step down from your makeshift stage, already planning your next performance, your next journey, your next tale. As you move through the throng, you're reminded of the delicate balance you must maintain. You're not just a performer, you're a custodian of culture, a guardian of stories that define a people. And in a world where everything is constantly changing, where alliances shift like sand, your role is more important than ever. So you press on, driven by the knowledge that as long as you have a voice, as long as you have a story to tell, you have a purpose. And as the afternoon sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the landscape, you feel a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the stories you carry, for the people who listen, and for the chance to be part of something greater than yourself. The journey continues, and with it, the stories you tell, the connections you forge, and the history you preserve. The day may be drawing to a close, but your work is far from over. After all, in the world of a bard, the story never truly ends. As the sun dips toward the horizon, streaking the sky with hues of gold and crimson, you realize that the real work of a bard begins when the shadows lengthen. You see, by nightfall, your role shifts from entertainer to something far more substantial. Sure, spinning tales of heroics and heartbreaks is all well and good, but as evening descends, the stakes get higher. This is when the real power of the spoken word comes into play, when stories shape not just minds but destinies. First off, let's shatter a few illusions. The romantic notion of a bard as simply the medieval version of a Spotify playlist is charming but misleading. You're not just providing background music to the tribal hustle and bustle. No, your words are the glue binding the collective memory and social structure of your people. You are the historian, the lawyer, and, at times, the judge. In a world where written texts are as rare as unicorns, you are the living archive. Think about it. In the absence of codified laws, it's your narratives that preserve customs and societal norms. When a chieftain's son claims his inheritance, it's the bard's recounting of ancestral stories that confirms he's right. You're the one who remembers which family betrayed another 3 generations back, the kind of memory that might make today's genealogists weep with envy. And let's talk about influence. Forget the idea of a harmless minstrel strumming a harp in a corner. You're shaping political landscapes with your tales. We're talking Game of Thrones level intrigue, minus the dragons and excessive brooding. Chieftains rely on your stories to legitimize their rule, to remind the tribe of their lineage and valor. It's not just about entertaining the masses, it's about ensuring they remember who to follow and why. But here's the kicker. This influence comes with its own set of risks. Imagine being a walking, talking political manifesto. You're a double-edged sword to the tribal leaders. One misplaced word, one tale spun with the wrong emphasis, and you might find yourself on the wrong side of a power play. Yes, bards wield significant clout, but it's a precarious perch. Align yourself too closely with one faction, and you risk becoming a pawn in their game, or worse, a scapegoat when things go south. Economically, your talents are invaluable. Your ability to sway public opinion is worth more than a purse of Roman gold. In a society where alliances are as fragile as a spider's web, your tales can forge bonds stronger than iron, or unravel them in an instant. This is why chieftains might shower you with gifts, from a warm cloak for the winter months to a handful of silver coins, in hopes of securing your favor. But beware, what is given with one hand can be snatched away with the other, should your tales no longer serve their purpose. Now, let's delve into your role as a custodian of history. You're not just retelling the past, You're preserving it for future generations. Your stories are the oral equivalent of a time capsule, capturing the essence of your era. And while today's historians might consult a dusty library, your library is your mind, meticulously catalogued and ready to be recalled at a moment's notice. Let's debunk another myth while we're at it. The idea that bards were solitary wanderers. Sure, there's romance in the image of a lone figure silhouetted against a misty hilltop, but the reality is far more communal. You're a key player in the social fabric, often attached to a specific tribe or region. Your loyalty isn't as free-floating as the tales suggest. You're part of a network, a web of relationships that require constant navigation and negotiation. And here's a fun fact. Your role in preserving history isn't just about the past. It's a powerful tool for shaping the future. The stories you choose to tell, the heroes you exalt, and the villains you vilify, all these narratives guide societal values and priorities. If you want to promote peace between feuding factions, you might recount tales of past unity and shared victories. If you're stirring the pot, well, tales of betrayal and vengeance might be the order of the day. It's all in the narrative you craft, and therein lies your power. But let's not get too carried away with the romanticism of it all. The life of a bard is fraught with challenges. You're constantly on the move, navigating the treacherous waters of tribal politics. And while you might be revered for your wisdom, you're also a target for those who see your influence as a threat. It's a precarious balance, and one misstep could see you out in the cold, literally and figuratively. As evening deepens and the fires are lit, casting a warm glow on the assembled crowd, you prepare to take the stage once more. But this time, your performance isn't just about entertainment. It's about reinforcing the social order, about reminding your audience of their shared heritage and the values that bind them. It's about wielding the power of narrative to shape the future. And as you begin to speak, the crowd falls silent, hanging on your every word. Because in this world, where the past and present collide, your stories are the threads that weave together the tapestry of life. You're not just a performer, you're the keeper of cultural continuity, the guardian of the stories that define your people. And as the night unfolds, you know your journey is far from over. There are more tales to be told, more histories to preserve, and more futures to shape. In the world of a bard, the story truly never ends. As the night deepens and shadows dance around the flickering fires, you reflect on your dual role as entertainer and educator, realizing that the legacy you craft isn't just a passing fancy. It's a blueprint for future generations, a script that's been whispered down through the ages. The stories you tell, the heroes you exalt, and the villains you caution against. They all find new homes in the minds of those who listen, morphing and evolving like a game of historical telephone. This is the tapestry of history, where the threads are as varied and colourful as the people who weave them. Fast forward a couple of millennia, and you'll find that the tales spun by bards have left their indelible mark. Take the Arthurian legends, for instance. Although they're set in a world that's more medieval than ancient Gaul, their roots can be traced back to the oral traditions of Celtic bards. Merlin, the wise yet enigmatic figure of Arthurian lore, echoes the druidic bards, keepers of knowledge, wielders of power, and a tad mysterious. Sure, Hollywood has turned Arthur's court into a spectacle of chivalry and CGI, but underneath all the glam, there's a kernel of truth that harks back to your own time. Yet, let's not kid ourselves. The romanticized image of bards wandering misty hillsides, harp in hand, is a far cry from the mud-caked reality you know all too well. The truth is, history has a funny way of cherry-picking the best bits, leaving out the blisters and bug bites. It's like editing a selfie to remove the spinach in your teeth. The appeal of a lone bard, the wandering minstrel with an enchanting tune, is undeniable. But let's be real. Most days, you're probably just trying to keep your cloak dry and your story straight. Consider this, the transformation of bardic traditions over the centuries is akin to a game of Chinese whispers. As stories passed from one bard to another, across generations and geographies, they accumulated layers like sedimentary rock. By the time they were finally committed to vellum, thanks to the spread of literacy and monasteries in the Middle Ages, these tales had morphed into epic sagas. Tales of grandeur that might make your original compositions look like a rough first draft. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How much of what we know today about Celtic bards is fact, and how much is fanciful fiction? The truth is slippery. Written records from your era are rarer than hen's teeth, largely because the Celts preferred oral traditions over inscribing tales on parchment. Consequently, much of what we believe about bards comes from later Roman and Christian scribes who had their own agendas, often painting Celts as noble savages or conveniently fitting them into moralistic fables. It's like getting your biography written by someone who can't stand you. You can bet there's a spin. Now, let's bridge the gap to today's influences. The parallels between the ancient bards and modern-day social media stars are uncanny. Both wield the power of narrative, shaping public opinion with every post or performance. Like bards, today's influencers live under the constant scrutiny of their audience, with a single misstep potentially leading to a PR nightmare, or worse, cancellation. The stakes may have shifted from tribal politics to brand partnerships, but the underlying mechanics remain remarkably similar. Economically speaking, the bardic hustle wasn't too different from the influencer grind. While you might have traded in tails for pigs and silver, today's influencers are cashing in on likes and brand deals. The currency has changed, but the hustle for recognition and resources is timeless. Just as your stories brought people together in assemblies, today's viral content creates communities across digital landscapes, each like a mini-tribe gathered around a virtual hearth. And what about the stories themselves? Here's where it gets interesting. While you were busy reciting sagas of old, today's content creators are crafting narratives that resonate with modern sensibilities. But the essence is the same, storytelling that connects, influences, and sometimes divides. It's a reminder that while technology may evolve, human nature and our love for a good story remains constant. As you lie down, the embers of the fire glowing softly, you think about the legacy you'll leave behind. Your stories may not be etched in stone or inked on parchment, but they're no less enduring. They'll be carried forth by those who've heard them, whispered through time, until they find their way into the annals of history. It's a comforting thought as you drift off, knowing that in the grand tapestry of time, your threads, mud-splattered and all, are woven into the fabric of something much larger. In the end, the life of a bard is a testament to the power of words. They endure beyond the lifespan of any one individual, morphing and adapting, yet always carrying the core of truth, however distorted. As the night settles in, you're left with the realization that being a bard is less about the stories themselves and more about the connections they forge. It's about being a bridge between past and present, a conduit through which the wisdom and folly of the ages flows. And as you close your eyes, you can't help but feel a part of that endless current, a silent participant in the grand, ongoing narrative of humanity.